Well, apparently we need to have some duck wings because we're winging it again.
Well, I was going to say something I shouldn't have said. But duck wings, yeah, I'll take duck wings. Duck wings is better than cormorant wings.
Yeah, I mean, it would be like that video you showed me of Bo chasing, what was it, the heron or cormorant or water
Oh,
turkey,
that was
whatever you want to call
awesome.
them.
You
Yeah,
should show everybody. I have a
yeah.
guard dog on my property. I mean, I have a guard dog, and here's the deal. He guards my seawall, to try to help prevent, those pesky cranes from causing it to fall into the lake, you know.
Right.
So, I mean, who cares about the wakeboard boats in the no wake zone that the Cypress district pulled up? But get this. So, I used to have the no wake zone buoys out here in front of my property because, by the state law, the distance for the boat has to be no wake from the bank line, right? The shoreline, right?
Right.
Well, they pulled up the buoys. My seawall's like all falling in and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now I learn that back deeper in the pocket, they put a no wake buoy. Oh, back there, for some reason, back there, they don't want boats on plane up there causing waves way back in there, but yet they come
But
flying out by my seawall and don't give a damn whether my seawall falls in the lake or not.
yeah, the heck with that Duke Lowry guy. If I remember right, in the back of that cove, it's like shallow anyway. I mean,
Oh,
unless
that's
unless the water's up, how are you going to really effectively get up on plane except for those pesky uh, jet skis?
Oh, but I can tell you, we're going to test all that because I'm going to take my ski boat and I'm going to go back in there since obviously the law does not apply in Bossier Parish. We're going to go back there and test it out. And
Hmm.
you know what? We're going to see how well everybody else's seawalls hold up. And, hey, what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
And speaking of geese and ganders and flying things, let's watch a little chase action going on here. Here we go.
Bo, Bo, Bo. Hey, Bo, there's an intruder on the property. You got to get him. You ready? Get out of here, Crane.
Good
There ain't
job,
no
Bo.
there ain't no fishing on our property.
Good job. Come on. Good job.
That positive
Good boy.
affirmation there, Duke. There you go. That's pretty good stuff.
That is.
All right. Well, we do have a few folks watching. We're already up to about 30 people. Hello, everybody. Val Baker, I see a comment there. Charlie and Judy, hello. What do we got tonight? We've kind of got a jam-packed show, I guess.
Jam-packed. That is a good way to describe it. It's a little bit of a hodgepodge of things. I would say probably an emphasis on insurance. You know, is there anybody that has any interest in their insurance? I mean, or do they think that they pay too much for insurance? Do they want to see their rates decrease? Do they want to know what the cause and effect is? And especially if you're a business owner, I mean, I think you might be interested in one of our guests tonight talking about, from a business perspective. And then there's the other side of the coin because it always seems like there's two sides to the story. You have the insurance people saying one thing, and then you have the trial lawyer saying one thing. And I think we're going to get both sides of it. And we've got more than that on tap, right?
Yeah, we're going to talk about some Bossier Parish School Board stipends. It just seems that they've found a money tree, so we'll talk about that for a few minutes. And look, we can't not talk about the term limits election this Saturday. This past Saturday, we won handily over 80% for both proposals. So we'll talk for a few minutes about that. We're going to gloat for a little bit. How about that?
I don't like gloating. I don't even like bragging,
I
but
do.
I know you do. I know you do. I think we were talking about that before the beginning of the show. So look, you can have your moment, and everybody can have their moment. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a long, hard-fought battle, but I don't know that we should gloat. Because the thing is that was one small victory in a bigger war,
Oh,
and we've got
yes.
a lot. We've got a lot more fights to come.
That we do. So maybe we can reveal again what some of the top secret plan is. It's not really that much of a secret because we've talked about it before. All right. Well, how about we go ahead and do our countdown and all that? Our guest, Miss Renee, is already in the green room sitting there, patiently waiting while we have her muted. So why don't we do our countdown, our intro, come back, and we'll bring her pretty quickly into the show and just get started. How about that?
Sounds like a plan. Let's roll.
All right, folks, y'all know the drill. We'll be back in about 2.5, 3 minutes. Grab your popcorn, grab a stiff drink, text your friends, share this out in your groups, share it out on your Facebook profile, all of that good stuff, and let everybody know that we were on. We will be right back.
Folks know a lot of the back office on the politicians that they think walk on water, they would be shocked. There's an old wound from a knife in my back that just is giving me heck lately, and it's just really irritating, so I have to kind of wiggle around a little bit.
And I titled it A Shot Across the Bow of the Good Old Boys.
Just, they feel helpless, they don't feel heard, they have nowhere to turn.
Some Republicans as well believe that government has the answers. And let me tell y'all something. I don't know anything government does well. Nothing.
And aren't there laws that say that you have public meetings so that the public can have accountability of their elected officials?
As a member of the media, I'm very concerned about what I've just heard.
Well, I'm not thinking Star Wars at all. I'm thinking zombie apocalypse. All folks coming from the border down there?
Yeah, it's going to border. It's actually going to Mexico and Boston.
Doesn't mean they interpret it the same way that I do. For instance, the Second Amendment. I take it very literally. That's been interpreted different ways in the court system all the way up to SCOTUS.
We're still right now combined on both pages and YouTube at 264 people watching. That is amazing, folks.
Through conscious, shocking action, which in turn would enrich sitting city council members Scott Irwin and David Montgomery Jr.
In theory, it's an every week thing. We got to double check and make sure it's like a miracle any of this actually works. This live broadcast is brought to you by the Outdoor News, fishing and outdoors for our area. Acadiana Mortgage, over 25 years in the mortgage business. Pelican Training and Consulting. Reach out to Julie Ferris. Smarter Geek, making technology easier. And folks sharing information and watching out. Now, grab your popcorn and a drink. Here we go. And we're back. 257 plus shows. Do you see what I titled this show? It's titled 8384.
I was wanting to
8384.
I was wanting to ask you what's that about? I don't get it. I don't know.
It's math. Well, maybe it has to do with insurance or actuaries, or maybe it's how we actually kicked the good old boys' rear ends. 83% and 84% of the polls this Saturday.
Oh, that's right.
But no gloating. No gloating on the show.
We did set a record in Bossier for, the highest percentile win in the history of Bossier with our term limits propositions. We did do that, didn't we?
Yes, we certainly did. Everybody did that was a part of that. All right. So I'm going to hit a couple of buttons here, and let me see if I can get our guest on. It'll take me just a minute. Let's see. We're going to place her there and do that, and we'll just do the introductions and all that live. How about that?
Hello, Miss Renee. How are you?
Hey guys, how's it going? I'm sorry I kind of missed the beginning intro of y'all setting up the conversation.
No worries whatsoever. So for those of you watching and those of you that will watch and those on the podcast, this is Renee Stelly Amar, Did I pronounce that right? Amor? Blah, blah. Anyway, I butcher names sometimes. I'm horrible like that, and I'm not even Kunas, so there's no excuse, I admit. But Louisiana Motor Transport Association, right?
That's it, the truckers.
And you've kind of been around the Capitol a long time, and this insurance debate's not anything new to you. And are we heading in the right direction? Or are we not heading in the right direction? And maybe what are some of the bills that you guys were following, and what's your take on things so far?
So I wasn't sure how y'all framed the issue before I was able to get on. I did have some technical difficulties earlier, but some people frame this issue as a fight between the trial lawyers and the insurance companies. And as you mentioned, Duke, I've been around the Capitol for quite a while. I was with an organization before called NFIB, which is the National Federation of Independent Business. I think you might have been a member of ours, and we might have been involved in a race of yours, but we have been involved in insurance issues for quite a long time. I came to the truckers about 4.5 years ago, and the frenetic pace that you hear from a trucker about his insurance cost probably started about 10 years ago, but it has escalated exponentially over the last 5 years since I've been with them. And I can tell you stories from the staged accidents in New Orleans, and the trial bar will tell you, well, we have fraud laws on the books, so that deals with that. But what it doesn't deal with is that my members have to hire counsel, shell out settlements in all of those cases, and we don't ever get that money back. And it's just part of the culture that we have in the state of Louisiana that I know that the trial lawyers don't like to hear it, and they like to act like it doesn't exist. But we definitely have a part of our culture that is seeking jackpot justice. They are looking for a lawsuit, and I don't know if most of the public is aware, but the reason that they stand on trucks in their advertisements and on their billboards is because we have really big insurance policies. So it's a lot more fruitful if you can sue a trucker who's got $1 million or $5 million policy than if you're going after somebody's car that's $25,000. Making 40% on $25,000, I think y'all could do the math, or making 40% on $1 million case.
So I got a question, and I don't have any trucking experience whatsoever, except for just general knowledge. But you mentioned earlier that half the people in Louisiana blame it on the trial lawyers, the other half on the insurance companies, and that's Governor Landry had the post where he had that at 32% each that people voted in his poll, blaming the trial lawyers and the insurance companies. So that tracks right with that. But let me ask you this: so who would you blame, or who would the Truckers Association blame? I mean, what do you think the root cause is? Is it just these frivolous or potentially fraudulent high dollar cases? And if so, why are the insurance companies writing the checks?
And Rex, that is part of our frustration and why we feel like we're squarely in the middle of it. I'm sure that y'all followed all of the insurance hearings over the last year. We literally met every month after Governor Landry vetoed that bill. And both sides, the House and the Senate, really dug pretty deeply into what are the issues. Why is Louisiana, both commercial and auto, in the top 3 easily with our insurance costs? And so the one major statistic that we seemed to hear over and over was that Louisiana experiences 3 times more bodily injury claims than the U.S. average. And so, if you've ever been on the other end of a lawsuit, especially in a car accident, these are the claims that people make when they go to the doctor. And I'm sure Ryan Gatti will tell you about some really egregious cases that have happened with truckers. We've all got bad apples in any industry, but by and large, my truckers leave their facilities every day. They are regular people just like you and I are. They want to go make their deliveries and they want to earn a paycheck and get back home to their family and their spouses, right? But what this statistic tells us is that we're targeted, and we're not just targeted for lawsuits where we truly did something wrong. This is people going to the doctor and claiming soft tissue injury claims. We have been told multiple times it is not an anecdote. We've been rear-ended and we are expected to write a check. So for me to say that I'm going to place the blame equally, I'm probably going to go in the state of Louisiana. We have got to rein in our laws as far as what the trial lawyers are allowed to get away with. What frustrates us, to what your point was earlier, Rex, is that in our cases especially, we find the insurance companies write more checks than what we would like. A regular person in a car doesn't want to hear that, because they'll tell you the insurance company didn't pay me what I thought I deserved. What my truckers experience on a daily basis is that we write way more checks than what we feel like we should.
Very interesting point. Yeah, go ahead, Dick.
Well, no, I completely agree with that. And Renee, I don't know if you know this, but I had a oil field service company where I operated trucks, operated them in Louisiana, and the insurance got to the point to where I had to relocate my company to Oklahoma. And immediately upon relocating my company to Oklahoma and I will lay a little bit of fault at the insurance companies in the process, but I saw immediate reductions, in my rates. I mean, and I would tell you, since I have, because it was oil and gas industry based, and we primarily operated in the Rockies, but when the Rockies played out and I had to come back to Louisiana, it was not worthwhile to do anymore. I just shut the company down. I mean, because if I had to do business in Louisiana, there's no point in doing it. And I would contend up here, like for us, Northwest Louisiana, you can look at all the tags on the trucks. They're not Louisiana-based companies. All of them are out-of-state companies. They're insured out of state. And so a Louisiana-based company is at a disadvantage. Now, you see this every day. And I think y'all had a post on a gentleman with a dump truck out of Baton Rouge or something to the effect with rates. Yeah. Tell me about that a little bit.
And I wish that was an anomaly. Your story is not. Anytime I go do a radio show, could be in North Louisiana or down here, inevitably I will get a text message or a phone call from some random trucker in a little rural city saying, my renewal is up this week. He's got 4 trucks and he is, just that far away from being able to, from having to shut his door. I don't know if y'all pulled this up, but this was one of the things that I actually wanted to talk about today was your example of the trucker he's actually in Denham Springs, but he had to move his business to Mississippi. And so this is Dustin Cluot. Dustin, this is a different person than who you were referring to earlier. Dustin, I think, has a trash business in Ascension Parish. And I know this because I lived in Ascension. And so he shopped you can take the one same truck with the one same driver, right? Because they don't do ratings in commercial like you do in auto, right? So they don't rate like our credit ratings and things like that. And so literally you're just looking at the value of that truck and how safe the driver is because we have safety ratings. That truck in Baton Rouge cost him $50,000 a year to just put that truck on the road before he's done anything. We are not talking about workers' comp, health insurance, taxes, and that's $50,000 of insurance just to put that truck on the road. Biloxi, Mississippi, $30,000, and Houston, Texas, $28,000. And I can tell you far and wide, over and over again, this is a story I hear, and this is why truckers have left Louisiana and gone to other states. Now, it means you have to adjust your business. You can't still primarily function in Louisiana. And so it's really uprooting what is typically a multi-generational family-owned trucking company. These companies have been owned by their grandparents and passed down to their parents and then their children. And they have shut the doors and moved out of state.
So Renee, let me ask you this question. And again, I have no trucking experience or anything like that, like Duke does. But when did this seem to get so far out of whack? So let me give you a real world example with me, and this is just on from driving a regular pickup truck and regular vehicles. I lived in East Texas for a while. When I moved to Louisiana, my insurance, moving state farm to state farm, literally doubled. Same policies, same driving record, which is nearly a perfect record. I guarantee you I can move back to Marshall or Carthage or anywhere, and my insurance would be reduced, if not half, nearly half probably. And that's not even talking about commercial trucking insurance. But my question is there a specific time gap? Like, was it 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or has this been the proverbial frog in the, warm water till it boils type of deal where it's just finally gotten outrageous?
We could probably spend a 2 or 3 hour segment on this theory called the reptile theory, that I'm sure Thomas Presley or Alan Sebald or Michael Mellarine or any of those other guys that do defense work could tell you about. There came a time in, maybe 30 years ago when the trial bar realized that our generation of jurors were not willing to cash out big jury awards. And so they really kind of had to change their focus of how they try to present evidence to the jury or the judge. And that theory is called the reptile theory, and it's really not based in any legal principle. It's based on psychology. And so I would just challenge both of you tonight, when we get off of this podcast, that you go check it out. Go on Amazon and try to buy the book on the reptile theory. I think it sells for like $2,000 or $3,000 a piece. But that is a theory that the trial bar has perfected over the years that says that when essentially truckers go to court, we're not going to court just to, find out the facts of the case and, what we've done wrong, and then we're going to pay out for that. They make us a reptile or a snake in the judge or the jury's eyes, and it causes an emotional appeal to them. And that was the way they realized that they could get higher and higher awards. And so it sounds like some kind of tinfoil hat theory, but I think, Rex, you might have just gone on Amazon and checked. The books are very, very expensive. And I know kids that have gone to the trial lawyer route for their profession. And the first thing they do in training them is send them to a class in Washington, D.C. to teach them how to reptile us in courts. And so what I would say is that it's led to the frog in the proverbial boiling water.
Well, that makes sense.
Over time, that money is going to catch up, and insurance only has a finite amount of money. And I think I'm sorry, dude, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, you don't even have to go to court to prove what you're saying. All you have to do just today, literally today, Renee and Rex, I went to the Caddo Parish Republican Executive Committee meeting. I'm in Bossier City at my office. I get on I-20. I drive across the bridge down Line Avenue to Superior Grill. I took notice of every billboard along that route. There was not a billboard other than a trial lawyer billboard. And you know what the most prevalent was? Make them pay. Make them pay with a truck superimposed in the background. That was it. And that is built into the psyche of all these Louisiana, and I think Governor Landry talked about this. I think it's been discussed down at the legislature, and the statistics bear out. And you pointed it out a while ago, Renee, that we are more litigious than anywhere else in the country. And I saw a stat recently that was mentioned. Maybe it was Tim Temple in a speech was talking about how New York has 3 times the population, yet we have double or triple the lawsuits or something to that effect. Am I right?
The bodily injury claims is what always Tim points to. And I know some people have pushed back on that because a lot of people don't drive in New York, but they still have 11.5 million drivers. So that is still 3 times the population of the entire state of Louisiana, of which we don't have that many drivers. Yeah, is that not a stunning statistic, Duke?
All right, but let me play devil's
Right.
advocate here for a minute, and I'm not on the side of the trial lawyers that want to make them pay $40 gajillion. Don't get me wrong, but I was in Columbus, Georgia, literally the last Thursday and Friday. I went up there. My son graduated from airborne school. We're at Fort Benning up there, blah, blah, blah. And I happened to take note while we were driving around with nothing to do, waiting on his platoon to get all their jumps in, of all the billboards in Columbus, Georgia. Okay? So Louisiana's not the only state that has it. And I just pulled up now. This is just a quick Google search, so these aren't necessarily the best numbers to go by, but I'm looking at valuepenguin.com. Their car insurance rates by state. And so Louisiana has, this is for a standard car policy, so not commercial. But Louisiana, they have priced at $249. Georgia at $183. Florida's at $272 full coverage. Florida is. And I looked up New York. New York's at $190, which granted is more than Louisiana at $249, but you would think, based on those numbers with the trial lawyers, that it would be much less than that, or a bigger gap between us and other states. My point is, are we really truly the most litigious state in the nation? Or is that kind of an urban legend? I mean, obviously we're very litigious. I mean, even Foster Campbell in his interview with the Sweatco the other day mentioned, do you boys know how litigious we are? But do you see the point that I'm driving at?
Yeah.
I mean,
no, absolutely.
How bad is it really here? We know how bad it is compared to Duke, your firsthand experience in Oklahoma, and most of our experience in Texas. But how bad is it compared to a lot of the other states?
And I would say, Rex, part of the states that you just mentioned have been undertaking mass, bold, big tort reform over the last 2 or 3 years. Florida, namely, being one of the first ones. Georgia, just in the last few weeks, Governor Kemp just signed that bill. In fact, I think Oklahoma has done some. Texas is looking at some again this year. They also did some a couple of years ago. But to your point of the billboard issue, right? Because it's a culture. It's one thing to have a culture where you encourage people to litigate. But what's interesting is in ours is the bodily injury claims, right? It's not just necessarily the filing of the claim or the litigation. It's what we're claiming happens to us. And so we've always said, are our bodies softer than they are in Mississippi? You know, you drive to Mississippi and they gave us John Grisham, who I think is probably one of the biggest, writers about fantasy trial lawyer stories known to man, right? But they have a thing in Mississippi called a cap on damages. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's hard for us just to pick, I think the governor at one point said, well, if y'all want to look at states that have low insurance rates, let's go to Maine. We said, okay. I mean, Maine's got some things that we don't do here. But one of the things that Maine has is an absolute prohibition on billboards. Period. End of the sentence. They don't care who you are. You can't put up a billboard. And so it's real hard to permeate that culture. And we've seen some numbers like those guys spend, $30 million a year between billboards and advertising. I don't know how much y'all watch TV during the day, but it's the same thing. It's just one, trial lawyer commercial after the other. But I think, Rex, it's the fact that I don't know if y'all know Representative Chuck Owen at all, but I love Chuck dearly, and he often says that he truly believes that this fault lies in the legislature because you don't blame the bear for eating the billy goat when, the bear's not being prohibited from eating the billy goat, right? The bear's going to do what the bear is going to do. And so you can't blame the trial lawyers for taking advantage of the environment that they're in. They're just doing their job that, they went to school to do.
That's true. And somebody, maybe it was, I think Kara mentioned, or somebody did in the comments that were scrolling by about uninsured motorists. So I just did a quick look at that, and I'm looking at the Insurance Institute's website real quick. Again, a quick Google. I didn't go back and vet and verify all these numbers, but we'll assume they're close. Louisiana actually ranks 23rd in uninsured motorists with approximately 13.7% uninsured motorists. Mississippi, which we just showed in your example on y'all's Facebook page, Mississippi is at 22%.
That's right. Yeah.
Interesting numbers.
And it was why I think this, the value proposition that the legislature got from taking almost an entire year was probably a good 7 or 8 months to really dig in. They did uninsured motorist, road conditions. One of the things that we don't talk about a lot in this whole trial lawyer insurance company fight or the medical providers, there is definitely people that are complicit in this practice. That I've got a company in the state of Louisiana that has 2 MRIs worth $80,000. Now, I don't know where you and I are ever going to go to get an MRI done where we would be charged $80,000, maybe $500, $1,000. But when they know it's an accident or a commercial case, there are these specialty clinics that have been built, and you and I off the street can't go to them. The only people that can go to them are auto accident victims. And so there's an entire ecosystem built around this in the state of Louisiana. And one more other interesting note is that I am a member of the American Trucking Associations, and obviously most truckers in the state of Louisiana, they drive over the road. And so these are people that aren't just staying here, they're driving to California and Minnesota and back. But the big national companies will tell you a lot of times when we're fighting some of these fights at the state capitol, we will have healthcare providers or the hospital community that will come out and oppose some of these bills. And they don't experience that in other states. So that tells me we're doing something different here than what they're doing in other states.
Yeah, it just seems like a really complicated problem. We all want to blame the trial lawyers. Half of us want to blame the insurance companies. Half of us want to blame uninsured motorists. But I think you're right. We're doing something that's not right. And I don't understand how we have all these literal insurance agents in our legislature, literal trial attorneys and insurance company attorneys, Mr. Seaball, in our legislature, and we can't seem to figure out how to get premium relief for us, the regular homeowner and vehicle owner, and for the commercial industry as well.
No, absolutely. I think because it's not an easy answer, just as you said, it's a really hard, complex issue. Commissioner Temple has a package of bills this year. I want to say it's 14, 15, maybe 16 bills. We don't think that there's just one magic bullet for this issue. We really haven't done tort reform, as people love to call it, since Mike Foster was in office. And so that, I want to say it was like the late 80s, early 90s.
Right.
And so we've done nothing let's just say this last year they undertook all this tax reform stuff, right? And we don't touch our tax books for the next 20 or 30 years. But what's going to happen is that other states are going to continue to cut, refine their tax systems, make, government more efficient, and, figure out more efficient programs. And they're not just going to stay, back in 2025. They're still going to continue to do things, every couple of years, which is what we're seeing next door in Texas. And so I think that that's part of our problem. We have this weird mentality that we tackled a problem 30 years ago, like we did with our Constitution in the 70s. And we just think, oh, we're done, put it away. And what I have realized over the years being at the Capitol is that as you do pass laws too, the people that are typically on the other side or that were your opposition, they're going to adjust and they're going to kind of figure out a way around that system the best that they can. And so that's why we really have to be coming back year after year, passing laws.
Yeah, and being proactive. Now, the LMTA, a lot of people think, trucking, they just think they get on the interstate and the vans, the trucks with vans going down the road, that's the trucking industry that you represent. And that's not actually the case. You represent the folks pulling a log trailer, hauling logs to the timber, mills. You represent, I think in the case we were talking about earlier, a guy with a dump truck, probably tow trucks. I mean, there's a lot of different variable types of transportation commercially that you guys are representing. And, I talking on the subject that we're talking about, and I think it's a mentality. We've been talking about this kind of on several shows before the show about following the discussion in Baton Rouge about how this mentality has been created in Louisiana that it's just normal for all of these lawsuits, and it's not normal. And as people go down the road and they see this commercial vehicle going down the road, and are we looking at it as with dollar signs in our eyes? And we need to change that mentality. And it's not just the truck going down the interstate, it's also these log trucks, it's also these wreckers, it's also these trucks just running routes within the city. And ultimately, if you sue those people, and ultimately if you go to one of these billboard attorneys, you're paying for it one way or the other. And just I think, to the public, I think the public needs to have some introspection on, is it right? Look, if you're hurt and there's an accident, everybody wants that person to be taken care of. I don't think there's anybody that doesn't want somebody to be taken care of. But this crap of trying to get rich, as you said, like jackpot justice, it's gotten out of hand, and we're all paying for it. We're all paying for it in our insurance. And is there politicians and reality on the street? And I know I'm going off on a rant here because this is personal to me for a lot of reasons. It's cost me a lot of money. I'm enduring, again, being, as I call it, being fed upon by a trial lawyer. In a way, I'm being fed upon right now. But do the legislators and our governor right now, do they realize that we have this problem, this societal problem that we need to educate our public? And are they looking at it in the context of we need to have more outreach and try to tell people that, look, the more you sue, the more your insurance is going to go up? Is there any discussion like that?
Dude, this is literally when people bring up truckers, and look, I know that there's definitely a segment of the population, they aren't big fans of truckers, but truckers kind of overall enjoy a pretty favorable perception from the public, like to the tune of about 70 to 80%. People understand, especially during COVID, that was kind of your connection to the outside of the world. I don't know about y'all, but I ordered a ton of stuff on Amazon. And to your point earlier, that's like might be a smaller truck that delivered those goods to Amazon. your grocery store, the way that they get their food delivered to the shelves is through a truck. The ball caps that y'all are both wearing came on a truck. The seats you're sitting in, this wallpaper behind me, 85% of the residents in the state of Louisiana rely on a trucker to get their goods. And I just like to remind people, because it's part of this culture too, is that this isn't just our insurance that's being hit, because it's all of our insurance that's being hit. And a trucker is just the middleman. We are in between the shipper and we're in between your store shelf. And so whatever extra we're paying for in insurance, you're paying for it in the price of your goods. So if we could lower insurance for truckers, it's really going to lower the cost of the price of goods for every citizen in this state. Unlike the gas gas is always a horrible example because they, kind of price fix gasoline. But, just anything that you think about that you use or you touch on a daily basis is impacted by a trucker's insurance. And yeah, I wish that there was a campaign like click it or ticket or whatever of, getting out of this. I see all these stories on Facebook of people that will have gotten like into a little fender bender and nothing was wrong and nobody was injured. And then a lawyer will tell them to sue their own insurance company. And they just say, no, I just want to be made whole, and that is supposed to be what our civil justice system is made for. If there's a criminal act that the other side likes to bring up, there's a whole criminal system that is built around people being penalized for committing crimes. But the civil justice system is not for me to pay penance as a business owner. It's for me to make you whole when I did damage to you. It's not supposed to be for windfall.
So I got a question with your association and all that. Would you, if you had to put, a priority list on things that truckers are concerned about, let's just say expense-wise,
Yeah.
would insurance be like the number one, or would fuel costs or road conditions? But where would insurance rank as far as the average trucker, owner, operator, whatever? Where would the insurance rank in that list?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, top 10.
Yeah.
And the irony, Rex, is that as trucking companies get larger and they have bigger fleets, usually when they get around the 150 or 200 truck mark, they are able to self-insure or get into a captive insurance product. And so their insurance rates look vastly different. So truly the people that we are hurting by not fixing this problem are our very small 4, 6, 8 trucks. The independent operator you were talking about, the guy that just has 1, maybe 2 trucks, and he, does some work for a trucking company, but he also, does some work for himself, but he gets to be his own boss. Those are the people that are really hurt from this situation because they can't to buy into a captive product because people like to act like that is a fix-all for us, but you have to put a substantial amount of money down or you invest $1 million of, kind of your own funding at some point. And so I do have trucking companies in the state of Louisiana that do that. Like when they write a check for $100,000, they personally wrote that check for $100,000. And I think that's why it's issue number 1, 2, and 3. Like it hits them so deeply. And then kind of what we were talking about earlier with the billboards is that their drivers leave the facility every day just to go make a delivery. And they feel like they're under attack all the time. I get text messages from commercials that are run across the state. And they say things like, truckers want to hurt you. Truckers are out to get you. To me, those things should be so highly illegal that an attorney wouldn't even want to advertise that in their ad, but they do. I have evidence of it. And you cannot tell me that that doesn't, further our jackpot justice culture.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm a tech guy, and I remember about 15 or 20 years ago, one of my first clients when I moved to the back to the Bossier area. Anyway, he's an attorney, and he was like, he wanted his own domain name for his small law practice, but I was like, "Do we need to build your website?" He's like, no, 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 no. There's strict bar association rules on websites, and I really don't want to fool with that. I just want the domain for my email address. I'm not worried about a website. Well, now you fast forward, and I mean, you're right to your point about seeing some of these crazy ads. I see Facebook ads, YouTube ads, all kinds of social media web ads, for lawyers everywhere. I mean, the billboard lawyers are not just on the billboards anymore, they're on the pixels of our screen.
Oh, there's a company called Demotech, and they do mass research into the fact that the trial bar has understood. They always do it, I always say, long before our side ever does, and I kind of use that in air quotes, but they are into search engine optimization now. And so where we're still worried about the billboards, these people are decades and light years ahead of us when it comes to the way that they attract their clients. And I mean, that's just, a lot of these guys, from what I've heard, and I don't mean guys in the sense of like male or female, but just, the lawyers in general in Baton Rouge, they enjoy the marketing aspect of it sometimes more than they do the actual legal, going to court and fighting stuff out. But yeah, their marketing is, there's no website I can go on. You can't turn on the TV, you can't do anything. We've kind of joked lately, I don't know about y'all's, but they give away bikes in Baton Rouge at Christmas time. They always have Jesus quotes, on their billboards, but we figure they're giving away bikes because nobody can afford their car insurance right now.
Right.
Well, don't let the billboard attorneys be on that, and the insurance companies we're going to have to insure the bicycles as well.
Yeah, no
Look,
doubt.
and I know it's not something that we were really kind of slated to talk about, but it's something that I think about. They've had a story this week over the autonomous trucking that is on a route right now where it's driverless. We've had some of it in Arkansas and Louisiana just by the fact that we have some of these larger companies that have a footprint here, and they've been testing autonomous trucking. But I've been asked, like, what does that liability look like? Who do you sue when there's a car wreck? What happens? So I think that's going to be an interesting, piece of culture that we look at over the next 10 years as to what all this AI and, autonomous driving does to our liability market.
That's
I
very
would
interesting.
I would love to be present at that DOT inspection. I would just want to be a fly on the wall.
Isn't that
You don't have to
interesting?
worry about whether that guy's speaking English or not, right?
Right.
Wow. So I've got another question for Renee. I don't know how much time you got left, Renee, and we've gone as late as 10 o'clock before. So, but I've got a question. So let me see if I can phrase this the correct way. There are different, types of loads that truckers carry. Let's just say whether it's a logger or whether it's a, box car delivering groceries or whatever. Is there a huge variance in insurance premiums depending on what the truck is delivering, or if they're hauling oil field parts out of state down, over to Texas or out in the Permian Basin? And do the insurance rates, like across the board, seem to vary about the same, or is there a huge discrepancy depending on what is being hauled by the truck?
Yeah, so absolutely, there is definitely a discrepancy depending on the type of commodity you haul, right? Because, maybe a timber log is, pretty heavy, or you haul hazmat. So they even have different levels of liability insurance that they have to carry. And so our minimum is $750,000, but most truckers carry $1 million. But if you carry hazmat, and so that's gasoline to like non-hazardous waste, those truckers have to carry $5 million. And so you kind of start there with like, what kind of truck, what's the value of the truck? How old is that truck? What's the safety equipment in that truck, right? Because we have this debate about dash cams. Well, essentially we have to have dash cams in our trucks anymore because it's really just our defense mechanism in all these fraudulent lawsuits. But once you get past the truck and past the commodity, then you have to identify where you haul. Because as you could imagine, probably hauling logs on a state or a local road in North Louisiana is going to have a different impact than some of my aggregate haulers that are hauling from Denham Springs to Port Allen, because they're crossing the Mississippi River Bridge like 8 or 10 times a day in traffic that is like that. And so the risk of them having a fender bender, dinging a mirror, barely scratching somebody, but that became a $150,000 claim is much higher than, somebody who's driving a very small regional route, maybe delivering water or Coke or, things like that. So yeah, all those do matter a lot. I don't find, I mean, definitely a North Louisiana to a very urban, route is going to matter a ton, but I do think they're relatively comparable if you're doing, non-hazardous waste in Lake Charles or non-hazardous waste in Ascension. I think those rates are pretty similar.
Right.
Yeah, I think that there are some improvements on, the insurance that truckers get, especially, with what is delineated as a surplus line and what is not delineated as a surplus line, and as well as transparency between the broker and, let's just say your local agent that issues your insurance. There's some issues there that I think would do well for the trucking industry to be cleaned up. But overall, I think the first improvement, definitely without question, is we get those stinking billboards down. But I'm going to ask you one last question, and we're going to let you get out of here. And I want to thank you so much for coming on. We need to have you back on again, especially as some of this legislation progresses, and we're either winning or we're losing here in this thing. Is the governor in the right place? And I know I'm asking you a tough question there, but is the governor in the right place? Because other media is kind of alluding to maybe he's not in the right place. I mean, what's your take?
And Duke, if I could say one other thing too, that just to set the record straight, because one of the things that the trial bar loves to talk about with truckers is that they had a hearing a couple of months ago in the Senate committee that kills all this stuff. And they brought this guy in from Missouri, and he had to have been a plaintiff lawyer, but he just sat and bashed on the trucking community for probably a good 30 minutes saying, our trailers in Louisiana are wider and longer and taller than other states. We're one of the most dangerous trucking communities in the nation. And I just want to say, and Rex, I know you could probably Google it here real quick. Statistically, that is such a falsehood. It's not even close to being the truth. We're not in the top 10. We're not dangerous truckers. And just a reminder, most of my truckers drive over the road, and so they're driving in all these other states. And all of our trailers are the same height and width. And if they're not, we get a special permit for that, just as you do in other states. I'm very... I'm not even sure if I would say I'm cautiously optimistic about the governor. I'm just very cautious right now. Obviously, there was some huge concerns over the veto of what was probably a relatively weak collateral source, the medical billing issue last session. And so I have just tried to go into this session and not think about what the Senate or the governor is going to do, and just try to be as aggressive as I possibly can for all of these truckers that text me and call me on a daily basis because they are not sure if they can stay in business. And so that is exactly where my head is. I pray to God that Governor Jeff Landry does the right thing, and when bills are put on his desk, that he signs them.
Yeah, he's definitely they've definitely been running some bills through Baton Rouge, and I think, my take on it is they're trying to throw a whole bunch of stuff against the wall and see what sticks and hopefully what helps, and so we'll see how it all turns out.
I completely agree with that, Rex. We just try to take, like, if 30 other states are doing it, we probably should do it. You
Yeah.
know, let's see what all stick. But I greatly appreciate y'all's time tonight, guys.
It's been a
Well, thank
very, very interesting discussion.
And
absolutely.
good to
Let's
see
do
you.
it. Let's do it again down the road, okay, Renee?
Absolutely. Appreciate y'all.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Well, and to quote Colonel Crockett, who is watching, I don't know if he's made it back to town or if he's still out of town, but Colonel Crockett said, interesting
He
interview. I agree.
he's still up there having a Rocky Mountain high.
Gallivanting around. All
So
right.
look, that was a good interview. The Louisiana Motor Transport Association, they're looking out for commercial motor vehicles, I would say, in the state of Louisiana, and it's been a huge problem. I've experienced it, and it ran me out of the state of Louisiana. I can tell you firsthand, and um, I, I don't know. There's a lot to clean up. I don't know if it's gonna get everywhere it needs to be this session. I hope that there's more progress made, and I would contend that it's not just. I think the first step is we have to get the trial lawyer part fixed, and then we're going to have some extensive oversight over the insurance companies as well too. It's going to be two part, and they're both of those two sides are going to have to make concessions. That's the bottom line, in my opinion.
Yeah, we're pretty much see eye to eye on that, and we're right in line with Landry's poll. Depending on how accurate that was, but I feel it's probably pretty accurate that it's pretty much split down the middle. So, let's see. I'm getting a text message from Mr. Gatti, our next guest. He just did a baptism. And he said that you need me to prep for as I'm driving. So he'll probably be about 10 or 15 minutes. That'll work out perfect. We can segue over to off insurance for a few minutes and over to maybe talking about, I don't know, you want to talk about the school board? You want to talk about the election? And then,
Well, I don't know. I mean, look, that school board thing seems to be cooking pretty good. I mean, that's raised a lot of people's eyebrows here in Bossier.
yeah, it really has. Let me send
And
him a
I'm not,
text real quick.
yeah, go ahead. And I'm not 100% sure that I disagree with why their eyebrows are raised, because here's the thing. How many times over the last 10 years, or maybe a little bit more than that, have we been asked to pass, tax increases? I mean,
Right.
that's my question. Repetitively, we're asked for tax increases, and that we need the money to give pay raises. And now all of a sudden, we're giving pay raises, and we haven't had any tax increases. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're having two pay raises back to back here in like within a month.
Well, yeah, and
Am I
I want to.
tracking right?
You are, but here's what I want to. We're going to go back in time and not spend very long on this, of course. But y'all have seen some of the posts that we made on Bossier Watch, and I keep referencing the 40%. So let me just do a quick rewind and explain why I keep harping on that and why we're continuing to discuss this, because in the 2019 attempted millage increase from the Bossier Parish School Board. Remember, folks, they told us, it was Armageddon if they didn't get this tax increase, and teachers were going to be, leaving out of the parish in droves and moving to other parishes, and just the sky was falling. And the 40% number that I'm quoting is because they were wanting to go from 65.36 up to 91.52 mills. That's a 40.02 increase. no matter which way you put it. Now, when that millage rate gets diluted into some of the other parish taxes and all that, it would be an overall increase of only 24 to 26%. So they were kind of in a box. The school board's response was, "Oh no! We're by the time it gets through all this, we're not going to raise it that much. It'll just be 25%." Now think about that for a second. But then fast forward to now, they're finding, I guess, money on trees. We need to go find this money tree. Maybe it's up here at the old ARC deal that they just paid a cajillion dollars for. Because look, Duke, we posted this. It's an email from Jason Rowland. They approved a one-time summer send-off stipend. I wonder if the head cheerleader came up with that name. The summer send-off stipend payable to every employee on May the 20th. Professional employees will receive $1,600. I guess, now somebody correct me if you're, work for the school board. I think professional employees equals teachers and administrative staff. They're getting $1,600. Support personnel, which would be like paraprofessionals, I guess maybe the janitors, I don't know who all else, they're getting $1,000, and all payments will be made by direct deposit. So not only did they just get a well-deserved raise, but they also are getting this stipend. I mean, it's like they're finding money everywhere now.
Well, wait a minute. Support personnel. What exactly is support? What differentiates a professional employee versus a support personnel? What exactly is a support personnel?
Service dogs, support dogs? I don't know.
I mean, what is that?
Well,
y'all, in the comments, y'all need to comment and tell me, because I don't know. I want to know. Tell me exactly what makes you a support personnel and what differentiates you from being a professional. Because I think I could support somebody and be professional about it. I really do.
Well, that's debatable in some circles.
I support you, and I feel like I'm being professional about it.
Well, no, you can't say we're professional. Those words can't leave your mouth. Remember, plausible deniability.
No, you're professional, and I'm support. But why should I not be paid the same as you?
Yeah. Look, I think some of the support professionals are like my mom used to work for the school board. She was what they call a paraprofessional. I guess that means half professional. I don't know. And, she used to assist the teachers in the classroom with certain kids and all that sort of thing. So I think that's one type of support personnel, but I really don't know what all the other types of support personnel are. Is it like the lunch ladies, lunch fellows, or whatever it is these days? I don't know.
Well, maybe that's you're a professional in training. You're training to be a professional.
Oh, well, I don't know. So y'all clue us in, and Grady Davis, if you're watching our show, since we're nothing but bomb throwers and all that sort of thing, and we're just looking for clickbait type articles, clue us in. What exactly are support personnel?
Okay, Jeff Sadow says, and it's not like their finances are much better than they were in 2019. It was simply a matter of OPM, other people's money, being denied by voting down Amendment 2, and the Bossier Parish School Board was caught in a political bind.
Yeah, well, that would be very true. Hey, I want to point out something else too. This last paragraph, and our guest Gatti's in the green room. He's getting ready to come in here in a few minutes. But look at this last paragraph right here. Let me see if I can point this out real quick. It says, "Please join me in thanking board members for their commitment to our Bossier Schools family." All right, let me get on my soapbox for a second. Jason Rowland, did you take your $200,000 plus salary and give any of that back to the teachers and the support personnel personally? Did all of y'all overpaid 100,000 plus employees? And look, I'm fine. I'm a capitalist. Everybody deserves to make as much money as they can ethically in life. But did y'all that are highly paid, did y'all donate your salaries back to the lowly teachers and support personnel? Or was it all of us taxpayers maybe that need the thanks, all of us taxpayers, for the commitment to the Bossier schools and that money tree that y'all have apparently planted and raised to fruition.
Well, I'm just wondering. I mean, does that 200,000 you're saying, does that include the 1,600?
I think he's getting a 1,600 too. Correct me if I'm wrong. Paging
Well,
Jason Rowland.
didn't
Pacing Sonya
didn't I,
Bales. Paging Sonya Bales.
yeah. But what I'm saying is, didn't I see something where the six-figure employees were excluded from public release? So I'm just wondering, is there another class beyond professional, meaning
Well,
maybe say admin
now,
and was that what, or are they
hold on.
considered professional?
Now, maybe you haven't seen the Drama Fest, but they did not withhold that data. There was a problem in transmission or communication between the, what was it, Open Data or Open Secrets, whoever it was, I forget, without looking it up real quick, and the newspaper, well, they're not technically a print newspaper, but the online publication. And so the school board did not withhold the data. So I want to make sure I'm clear. We've already posted edited our comment on it. Now I can say
it was. So you're saying that it actually was released?
It was released, yes. Unlike in 2019. Well, actually in 2019, they released that information too, but I've got to say, I've posted about it, and I will say it here on the record. I've said it before. They purposely, well, I feel, and so does a couple of lawyers feel, that they purposely sent the wrong data and only corrected it under threat of a lawsuit and making it blow up on billboards, that they sent us the wrong data when we're fighting this in 2019. But again, I digress. I'm sure we don't need to go down the history.
Sometimes it's the way you ask the question. I mean, I know of some other shenanigans, as you say, and historically that have taken place, and from non-lawyers dealing with lawyers.
Well, speaking of lawyers, we have coming up here in just a second, Mr. Ryan Gatti. Now, let me start clicking buttons here. And Ryan's claim to fame, among other things, is that not only is he the former state senator for District 36, I believe I got that right, but he is also a personal injury attorney, as he advertises on his Facebook page. So let me go ahead and hit the button here. Mr. Gatti, can you hear us?
Hey, how are y'all doing?
Pretty good. How are you this evening?
I try to dress like Duke tonight. This is black coffee. This is black coffee. Nothing in it.
Yeah.
Hopefully not Black Rifle. They went liberal on us.
Well, thank y'all for having me on.
Well, look, I mean, you are the go-to guy on the insurance thing. And, so I'm going to beat you up a little bit tonight, but I will at the start, right out of the gate, I'm going to give you credit.
All right.
I know you can handle it. You and I debate all the time. It's a lot of listening, but finally I just say, okay, Gatti, that's enough. I can't take any more. But
I can
no, seriously. So, all right. So ask Rex about his studies with AI regarding the insurance issue.
Oh, yeah.
So Rex, my first question tonight is, tell me about this AI study with insurance.
Well, my first response to the first question tonight is, I loaded up all of the bills, the 16 bills that Landry, I think that post came from Landry anyway, and had it do a deep dive comparative summary of all of these bills and analysis. And it did a wonderful job where I'm going to go through and double check the data and double check it and all that before we post it on bossierwatch. But it came up with a very interesting table on information, whether the bills, are going to help with premiums, whether they're not, the impact on everything, the political viability. Did an interesting job on all 16 of those bills. It's a lengthy document, but I think folks will find it.
Well, that's funny because I did the same thing. I'm joking. I just read them.
Okay.
I use Gatti intelligence. So.
Well, since we don't here on this show, we're complete amateurs, and we're certainly not attorneys. We only pretend like it on Facebook sometimes, but we didn't have the ability to read through all of that legal jargon in those bills. But why don't you give us kind of I know there's a couple bills that we want to focus on, but maybe give us your broad overview on what the legislature down there in Landry are trying to accomplish. Give us the, as you say, the 60,000 foot view.
Well, yeah, I think the first thing that we see is these are not new bills. This isn't, these are not unique. They're not original thoughts. Even when I worked in the legislature during law school in the late 90s as a law clerk, all these ideas have percolated as tort reform for really since the Ford Pinto case. Okay. So insurance companies want caps. They want people who don't pay insurance not to play. They want court reform. And so their idea is no matter what we do, we can't control juries because juries live in the community where the hurt people have to go to court. And so for centuries, if the jury thought there should be more safety, they awarded a lot of money. If the jury thought the facts before them weren't worthy of more safety, they lowered the number, knowing that these huge payouts never get paid. I mean, 409 million, 500 million, those never get paid, or they are reduced on appeal. Everybody knows that we already have caps in place and those kinds of things. So really what we're seeing here is that a Bossier jury a few years ago looked at the death of a young girl named Katie Bug. And the most conservative Republican jury I'd ever seen, a friend of mine had the case, they said, you know what, when a trucking company, an oil company allows somebody with a history of meth to drive their F-350, knowing that he's been in a lot of wrecks and knowing that he's broken all the rules, we're going to send a message. 409 million. The verdict was actually based on Katie Bug's birthday. That's how they came up with it. And these were Republicans. So that sent a firestorm through the tort system, the tort reformers, because they said, hey, if we can't get a Bossier jury to zero somebody out, we need to go to the legislature and change the rules through which the local people filter these horrific cases. And that's what we're seeing. So that's kind of the 30,000 foot view, is that they trust us because the jurors come from the voter rolls. If you register to vote, you agree ahead of time, you can be on the jury. So we have a very conservative, Bossier's very conservative when it comes to money and things. So you don't hear about the cases where the TV lawyer asks for $5 million and the Bossier jury gives him $200,000. You only hear about the ones where, runaway jury, but no one ever says, what are the facts of those? And so what we found when I talked to my friends in the insurance, who are insurance lobbyists, they say, look, we can't control juries. And really, most countries hate juries. They do king trials, judge trials. It's just lawyers and judges in a room. And that's why big companies love arbitration, because it takes the jury out of the situation. So what we end up with is, since 1975, is a system that's really unique in America, is we had a jury system where the verdicts would increase or decrease safety. And when I was in law school, they did a really significant thing. They capped damages on the state to $500,000 because so many people were getting killed on the bad roads. Well, when you hear people are getting killed on the bad roads, there's a high verdict. Well, the defendant's supposed to make the roads better. Instead, what they did is, we're just going to cap what they can sue us for. Well, now we have unsafe roads and caps. You see what I'm getting at? That's kind of not how the jury system is set up. So,
let me ask you a question.
What we're seeing today is, to kind of wrap up the 30,000 foot Google Earth view, is a leveraging down on changing the rules about what a jury can hear and see and do. And so we're going to talk about some of those statutes tonight. I think they're going to become law, and I think people need to know. One of the hardest talks I have at this table with people is if their child has died or someone has died, and I've got to explain to them, yes, tort reform applies to you. This is not for the poor people, or the uninsured people, or the $15,000 cases. I mean, there's been people that sit at this table with me who have a $3 million bill at LSU. And we have to battle for 6 years to get their medical bills paid. And they never would have come to see me. They look just like us, hardworking people.
So,
and we have to battle that. So we're going to see some rule changes.
So, all right. So I got to take kind of the other side of this thing here, and our insurance companies. I don't have to, right? No, I have to, because one, I have been a victim, and I'm currently a victim of, and you and I have talked about it. I'm currently a victim of this trial lawyer thing. It's happening to me right now. So, but it's not about me. It's about the wider problem that everyone is, it's hard. We have to separate ourselves out, but it's hard not to be a part. We live here. We're residents here. This is our home. You in the profession that you try to, proceed in, and you went in politics. You tried to make a change, what you thought was best. Me just being a resident, I've tried to make a difference in politics, but we still are victims or subjects or whatever you want to call it. So you're talking about, people getting hurt. I don't know anybody that if someone is not suffer, from some event, whatever it may be, that people don't want them to be taken care of. I don't know anybody that is that cold-hearted. I've not met them that they don't want somebody taken care of. I don't know that person.
Well, and we see that in jury awards. People who are not hurt bad don't get any money. People who are hurt really bad, they pay for all their harms and losses. That's what we're seeing in the jury pool. Just but the victimization is a deal.
Okay, but I mean, are the insurance companies making so much money? I mean, are they bragging about the money that they make? I don't see that.
I think that,
the reason I say,
yeah, go ahead.
The reason I say that is because Neblett, Beard, and Arsenault, $10 billion. Laborde and Digger Earl. Digger Earls is a friend of mine, $1 billion. Gordon McKeenan, $3 billion. Morris Bart, $1 billion. Morgan and Morgan, $25 billion. They're advertising about how much and how, I mean, I got, that just disgusts me. And are we running over people that bad? Would you not agree that we have in Louisiana, we have a culture now that is different and has changed? And do you agree or disagree with that? The statistics that they're saying, like, for example, the New York, they've got 3 times the population and a quarter or a third of the lawsuits that we have in Louisiana.
So let's start with that one fact, because I did research that 9 years ago when I was in the legislature. And I really got down to the analytics of it to think, like, Louisiana with 4 million population, how do we have more lawsuits than? Well, if you just took New Orleans and Miami and you extrapolated denominator for population, and you came up with some good per capita numbers, we had a lot more lawsuits filed than Florida, right? Miami and New Orleans. So everybody said, well, it's because we have billboard lawyers, but then I looked over, they had billboard lawyers too. They have runaway jury. We have runaway juries. Florida has had some huge verdicts. Okay. And they have Disney World. They have Miami. They have professional baseball, football, they're a lot bigger than us. And so what it really boiled down to is when you look at the raw numbers, and this made so much sense to me, because remember, when I went in 2016, I was vice president, Republican Party of Bossier. And even though I'm a Republican trial lawyer, I was ready for tort reform to happen. I was hoping it would happen at some degree, because my family's in the law company, my family's in the record company. My family, I got kids that drive. And so
I want to interrupt you and concede the majority of lawyers that I talk to, they're in favor of doing something about this billboard stuff.
Just taking it from a telescope to a microscope and looking at Miami and New Orleans. Why did New Orleans have more lawsuits filed? Okay, it's because Florida has a 4-year prescriptive period. Louisiana has 1. So when a friend calls me and says, Ryan, I got in a wreck, the first thing I say is, where were you? If they say, I was in Louisiana, then I say, when did it happen? They say, May the 7th of 2024. I have to go to my office and draft a lawsuit, because if I don't, I've committed malpractice and the statute of limitations will run. You see? Now, if they say, oh, Gatti, I was down at Navarre Beach and somebody ran into my Porsche and broke my arm. I'll say, dude, you got 3 more years. You'll be healed in 2 years. You don't need a lawyer. Just call the adjuster and work it out. If they're mean to you, I'll write a letter. Okay? So the reason that we have more lawsuits, which equates to cost, than Florida is because if I practiced law in Florida, I would probably never file a lawsuit. Because most terrible injuries fully resolve. You get to, you're doing good, then you get in a bad crash, you go to 0, then you go back and forth, and you plateau out. That plateau, what's called maximum medical improvement, typically happens at the end of year 1 or by the beginning of year 3. So every other state, like I think Utah is like 6 or 8 years, Maine 7 years. We were the only one with a 1-year prescriptive period. So what we're finding is I drafted a bill in 2016 to change the prescriptive period to 2 years. The trial lawyers fought me, the billboard lawyers fought me, and guess who else? The insurance companies fought me. If you go back and watch that bill, because the video's there, you will see both of them come to the table and say, 2-year prescription's bad. Because billboard lawyers like 1-year prescription. You see? Because if you have 2 years, then I'm probably not going to call a lawyer. I could probably figure it out myself. But if you're sitting there at the 11th month and your ankle still hurts from where it was broken, you have no choice in Louisiana. They did change it last year because they had to do something because we were in crisis mode. So they went to the actuaries and said, how do we lower rates a little bit to your prescription? And they're like, man, we really don't want to do that because, the Alan Seaballs, my buddy Alan, he's a State Farm attorney. He's not going to get as many calls because not as many lawsuits are going to be filed. And then correspondingly, the billboard lawyers will have less work. It won't affect my business at all. So you have to really get down into these numbers. So when I hear people saying, oh, we got to cap damages, we got to do this, I'm like, have you looked at the data? Have caps ever lowered rates? Have these things ever lowered rates? So the 1-year prescriptive period created a urgency for anyone. And look, I've had some rich people I go to church with call me and say, we need to file a lawsuit. We got hurt 11 months ago. And they're not on Medicaid, Medicare, trying to milk the system. They legitimately, their Porsche hasn't been paid for. The adjuster's been dragging their feet because in Louisiana, on the 366th day, prior to this law change, people used to come and say, I had back surgery last year. When was your crash? Oh, it was in 2021. I'm like, your case is over. You had 1 year. So I think what we're going to see with the 2-year prescriptive period is aggressive advertising for a while, and then all that fruit will start to die on the vine. I mean, because look, we do big injury cases, but we also do estate planning, adoptions, family law. We do defamation cases. We don't just do personal injury.
Look. Yeah, there is
for us being one. I mean, am I crazy? Like, you're going to have more lawsuits with a 1-year prescriptive state because in Florida you have just as many claims per capita, but they don't evolve into lawsuits.
Well, look, you're a lawyer. That's the chosen profession that you chose to go down. And I respect that and I appreciate that. The truth of the matter is, you know what? We need lawyers. That's the bottom line.
That's the end of the show. Thank you all for tuning in. That was a great show.
Just like we need tech people like Rex. We have to have tech people that can make all these pixels work and do the things that they do. And we need rogue scholars of Stupidville like me, that can measure all the rest of you folks. But the thing is I'm just wondering, I mean, has it gotten out of whack? Because, you know, I recall in previous conversations, you know, that there's caps, you know, there's caps on damages and stuff. And when I'm doing the math and I'm thinking about some of these billboard lawyers bragging about the billions, you know what I think when I hear them bragging about billions? I think about ducks. That's what I think about. And when I say ducks, you'll know a little bit. We've talked about this in the past, but I think about the people who are flooding unharvested corn in Missouri and southern Illinois to shortstop ducks from migrating to Louisiana. They're getting it because they're getting billions to put that habitat and flood that corn and to do all that. They're getting billions while us here in Louisiana are getting millions. My point is,
wait a minute. I got to push back a little bit there. I think this is
okay,
more.
come on.
If they were really getting billions and billions, do you still think they would be advertising, or will they be doing like most billionaires would do? I think they're more like bass fishermen. They're bragging about the great fishing trips, the few great fishing trips, to help moderate the mediocre fishing trips. If they're all making billions, why are they still advertising? Why isn't Morris Bart taking Landry on more duck hunting trips or whatever he went on?
Oh, whoa, easy.
Or McKiernan, whichever lawyer it was, they all run together.
So everybody knows what happened to our daughter with her brain injury, and she died 10 years later. And so people bring me terrible cases and they ask me for help. And my fear is that I'm going to sit at this table one day with somebody who's been in an explosion, and the 18-wheeler driver that caused it was drunk, and the boss knew he was drunk, but because of the cap, right? Caps change a lot of things. And let me tell you, there's three people involved in a crash, okay? You have the family that causes it, right? Because it's not just one person. I mean, I've caused wrecks and I've been hit before. So you have the person who causes the wreck. You have the person who is hit by the wreck. And 99% of the wrecks are somebody's 100% at fault, okay? The third entity is the insurance company for the at-fault party, okay? And so when we think about insurance, we have to think about it in that triad, that three-legged stool, because if you just talk about one or the other. So you can have an insurance claim with the person that caused it, the person that was hurt, and their insurance company. So the lawyer typically comes in for the hurt person to help battle the insurance company for the other side. So here's when we talk about reform, we should look at the three people that are typically involved in a crash. That is the person that caused it, the person who is not at fault, the person in front who gets hit from behind, and then the insurance company for the person who caused it. So when we think reform in a very theoretical way, reform has to impact all three. Okay, so let's look at the culture. Like Duke's talking about the culture. Right now, there's no regulation on those three. It's like you've got one leg of the stool is 5 foot long, one's 5 inches long, and one's just a nub with termites in it. It's an unhealthy, completely unhealthy situation because plaintiffs are inspired to inflame and exaggerate claims. The insurance, the person that hurts someone, their rates are going to skyrocket like they caused a nuclear war because no one regulates rate increases when you're at fault. Other states say, hey, you know what? It's not healthy to ding John, who caused this wreck, 50 experience points because it was a fender bender. But in our state, man, if a 16-year-old gets a fender bender and no one's hurt, the insurance company ends up paying the policy limits, and then the person who caused the wreck, their insurance shoots straight up. So we have to look at how unhealthy that situation is. And so here's what I see. I see insurance companies writing checks for 3 times the value of the case. And then they take that loss to the commissioner and say, hey, we wrote $1 billion last year. And then he goes, well, here's your 7% premium increase. Good job. Whereas in other states, they bring that $1 billion and the rating commission in Texas or whatever the nomenclature is for that state. They say, wait a minute, We want to see specifically, let's just pull this file. Why did you pay $15,000 when no one was hurt? And that insurance company in Texas will say, well, the billboard attorney asked for it. Well, that might work in Louisiana, but it doesn't work in Texas. Let's see. You can carry over not the $15,000 to get your premium increase. You can carry over $3,750. Well, in 2 years, that insurance company stops paying $15,000. You see, that's what Texas and other states did in tort reform. Here's how we handle it. We do it. There's a bill right now in the legislature that is just classic, basically put the screws to the two people in the wreck. And let me tell you how magnificent this is. And you really have to, whoever wrote this had to really blush and say, man, if I win this, like, I'm going to get a huge bonus from as an insurance lobbyist. Now, I want you to think about this. Let's use the three of us. Well, let's just use the two of y'all because I'm not getting involved. I want to be one of y'all's lawyers. So I don't want to conflict myself out. So, Duke, you got one of your work trucks, okay? And you got no points on your CDL. And Rex over here, he pulls out, runs a stop sign. All right, or you run a stop sign, okay? You have a commercial truck. You run a stop sign. You didn't see it. You didn't mean to. All right. So Rex pulls out and you hit him and it's 100% your fault. Okay. Let's just assume all that. You come to my office and I say, man, don't worry about it because Rex didn't have insurance. So what's the phrase? No pay, no play. Okay. So I call your insurance company. I said, hey, this guy named Rex Moncrief, he's probably got about a $15,000 claim, but the law is, since he didn't have insurance, he didn't pay, he can't what? Play. Are you with me? So you and I have a talk. You're like, Gatti, thanks for explaining that to my insurance company. They didn't pay Rex a penny. You come back 6 months later for your insurance renewal, and they act like they paid him $1 million and say, Duke, we've got to double your rates for your at-fault accident. And you say, ma'am, wait a minute. I got one wreck and you didn't pay a penny. And you know what they told me in the legislature? I drafted a bill that said if Duke runs into somebody and they don't have any insurance and Duke's insurance pays nothing to Rex, that Duke's insurance cannot raise his rates. Because you see, when we do no pay, no play, right? We don't make it full circle. We leave out the important part, which is the rate reduction or the you can't raise Dukes. So here's what we're the only state with no pay, no play where when the Duke runs into the Rex doesn't get paid and Duke's rates go up. So we didn't do the bill right. You see, so there's a bill right now in the legislature that is raising the no pay, no play. It is $15,000 right now, the first $15,000 of pain and suffering, and it's $25,000 you don't get to collect for your property damage. Okay, so they're going to raise it to $100 and $100. So if Duke runs into Rex and Rex has $90,000 bill at LSU Health Science Center, that bill doesn't get paid by anyone, but Duke's rates go up. That is not no pay, no play. That is Duke gets the screws put to him. And Rex gets the screws put to him, and the insurance company doesn't pay the claim, and they get to raise your rates. That is, by definition, what Louisiana tort reform means. So when you hear Georgia did tort reform, guess what they did? Duke hits Rex doesn't get paid, Duke, your rates don't go up, and insurance company, so sad. That's the difference. And if you don't do all three legs of the stool, so here's how powerful insurance companies are. They think me sitting in Bossier, that I'm the problem, and I get invited to these things. I don't cause the wrecks. I don't do that. So go ahead. I hope that does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense what you're saying, but let me pull you back down and bring it back down. I mean, look, you are who you are. You and you can roll. You'll go. But you got to admit, I mean, it has to scream, to you that those statistics about, I want to go back to 3 times the population, and of what Louisiana has, and we're only like a third of or they only have like a third of the lawsuits that we have. I mean,
Well, I think it is
highest per capita
But-
injury claims of
Wait,
any
wait,
other
wait,
state.
Whoa, stop. Time out for a second. I'll let y'all go on about your thing. So I want to remind you again, Duke. Here's what I'm concerned about. I don't work for an insurance company, and I ain't no personal insurance lawyer. I just pretend to be a lawyer on Facebook. Here's the deal. I'm worried about what I'm handing out to State Farm and every other insurance company that's coming out of my pocket that is continuing to go up, even though I have nearly a perfect driving record just using vehicle insurance. New York, I'm looking at the valuepenguin.com car insurance site, but I've pulled up a couple others. They're fairly close. New York, full coverage premium is $190. Louisiana is $249. So that is about a $50 difference, but it's not that great of a difference. So by using your logic there, and I we don't always agree, Duke, Louisiana's rates should be astronomically higher than New York's, and they're just simply not. It's like everybody keeps talking about uninsured motorists. Texas has a higher uninsured motorist percentage than we do. Slightly higher, but it's higher.
Well, the bottom line is
wait a minute.
We
Let me
have
get
the highest per capita injury claims of any state in the country.
Okay,
that's a fact.
That may be a fact, but we don't have the highest number of uninsured motorist claims. And the HB 434 no pay no play bill by DeWitt. All right, so I'm reading this analysis that I did. All right, with obvious help.
AI did it.
Don't tell everybody that. I'm having to go back and check all these facts.
He is the tech guy. He is the tech guy.
Smart lawyer now.
All right, so, but I'm looking here, and guess what? It says, major, for premium reduction potential, it says moderate. Major reduction in payouts to uninsured victims essentially eliminates most claims by uninsured parties and may boost insurance purchase rate. So I'm relying on the Alan Seaballs of the world and the insurance companies he works for to be benevolent overlords. And because we're going to up the no pay, no play recoverable damage or non-recoverable damage, they're just going to be nice and give us back our premiums. I don't think so. I don't live in that magical fairyland.
Well, I'll tell you, but I used to live in that fairyland. And then, like Tommy Boy, you can take the butcher's word for it, or you can stick your head up the cow's rear end. So I stuck my head up the cow's rear end, and I ran for the Senate, and I stupidly won. So I sat down there thinking, oh, my God, that's a T-bone. And it wasn't. It was spam. And so we sit there and we watch this happen over and over again. And this no pay, no play thing, leaving out the Duke in the situation, I want you to know that what they told me when I did my bill is they said, no. We're not going to pay Rex in that situation, but we're going to hammer Duke on his experience modifier. And I said, then this is not premium reform. It is payout reform. Payout reform may one day in 3 years, if there's not inflation, and I'm quoting Representative Furman, who said this at the Baton Rouge Press Club yesterday. He said, basically what he said is, I'm not going to guarantee a rate reduction for anybody because of inflation. But he wanted all 18 bills to be passed. And he said, maybe in 3 years, if there's not inflation, Duke's rates will go down. Well, I think Duke's rates should not go up because of a wreck he had where he was at fault, but nothing was paid. So our note, that bill you just read, it was important that what you said about AI saying it may be a moderate reduction one day because it lowers payouts. When you translate that to Louisiana's tort system and the lack of regulation from the Commissioner of Insurance, I have voted on bills like that, and I voted against bills like that. And with all the good and bad experiences I had, I will tell you, if AI or if your gut tells you it might reduce it one day, I mean, let me see, Duke, if I cut 100 acres of your timberland and I said, I'm going to pay you in a year, you'd be like, if you cut my timber, I want to get paid as soon as it hits the mill. I want to check every time you make it. Like, that's the deal, right? If I said, no. And Rex, I'm going to cut yours, but I'm going to give it to Duke. You'd be like, no, Gatti, you're crazy. That's not how it works. So the way that the current legislature is negotiating tort reform is, I'm giving you all the rights the jury has, and I'm going to give you all the rights the injured people have. And would you promise me maybe one day you'll reduce my rates? And when those chickens come home to roost, they say, in 3 years, they say, well, now we give get reelected. We're really going to reduce your rates. I'm like, no, you're not. The insurance company's going to say, you already given us everything we want. I mean, if you go from, give a pig a pancake book, or if you read the book of Proverbs, anything in between, this is terrible negotiations. Terrible.
Well, I want to pull you off the ledge just a little bit. I mean, look, I'm not completely 100% on it's all the trial lawyer's fault. I'm not there, or the billboard lawyers. I'm not there, because I can tell you real world experience that I think there is problems with the insurance company. And I think that there is a lack of transparency between, the agent and the broker when they quote rates and what they tell people. And you talked about it, modifying experience modifiers and those things, and what from personal experience, what is designated as surplus lines, what is not designated as surplus lines. There is no transparency in how those determinations are made, and it's a moving target. I know that from firsthand experience. In fact, it is there are a lot of insurance tactics that are used to put the business person at a disadvantage. I mean, I can't tell you how many times it was take it or leave it, take it or leave it. You can be a company with a perfect record, and you're drug out. Oh, we're shopping it. And you wait down to the last minute, and well, here it is, take it or leave it. And you got no choice. And that has to be addressed. That has to be.
But how should it be addressed? How is there any of the bills that you read on AI, Rex, or any bills you read that address the fact my dad's had a wrecking yard for 60 years? They said tens of thousands of dollars for one record. He shut it down this year. He said, I can't do it anymore. And it's sad because, it was really sad, because I thought this group of Republicans was going to do premium reform and tort reform, but they did one leg of the stool. They made sure the insurance company could make a lot of money. I mean, last year was horrific with homeowners insurance. I mean, they promised us the moon, and they said, hey, if you pass this bill, like in 3 years, your rates will go down. People's policies are getting canceled because of a bill last year by a local senator. And he's an Allstate agent. And he said, this is going to create competition. We need lower rates. We need the store with Duke's name on it and his trucking company to have lower rates. We don't need more competition.
But Ryan, isn't it accurate that here's what I would say. Isn't it accurate that there is insurance companies and that there is lawyers that are actually prevailing, in the climate that we're in? They're the winners, and everybody else is the losers.
100%. I mean, we used to represent probably a couple hundred people that were in wrecks, and we'd never file suit. It'd be fender benders, help them get their car paid, get them a little bit of money for pain and suffering. And there were folks like us. It was just like run it through the mill. We don't have those anymore.
So which is more likely to be successful in a legislature? And I'm not just saying, I'm saying the legislature. I mean, I think we kind of know how things turned out when you were in the legislature, not talking about you, but with that particular body, and even fast forwarding to the body that we have now, which legislation is most likely to prevail? And, when it prevails, and you and I have had this debate, I mean, I'm for one side or the other, just completely winning out all the way so that we can prove once and for all who's right and who's wrong. And, either that's the answer or it's not.
Duke, I think you're about to see that because hundreds of millions of dollars were spent by lobbyists they can't always know who's going to be on a jury because it's random. So in order to fix the system, they have paid for the legislature and they have backed them up with propaganda. I mean, listen, for the first time, and I've been watching, I'm a nerd, I got a degree in history, but I've been watching the Senate and House floor for probably, I'm 50, about to be 51, probably 25 years, 30 years.
You're only 51.
Yeah, well, I'm bald, so
Baby.
That's because of y'all. Okay. But I'll tell you, the last week was the first time on the House floor that legislators said about tort reform bills that they haven't talked to an actuary, they haven't talked to Tim Temple's actuaries, and their bill will not reduce rates. Now, I've never heard those three things said publicly about tort reform. So if you leave out, I haven't asked for actuaries, right? I haven't had the commissioner's actuaries look at my bill, and this is not about lowering rates. Okay, so when I got three legs to the stool, guess what that means? The guy that hits you, he's going to get screwed by this, right? The guy that gets hit, that family, that bus, school bus, whatever it is. I mean, we see 18-wheeler wrecks on I-49, I-220 every day. Okay, people are getting crushed and hurt. Okay, so the 18-wheeler company that causes the wreck, the family that gets hurt by them, or vice versa, we know both of them will not benefit from this legislation. I have never seen that so blatantly and boldly said in the legislature. Typically, like with House Bill 372 in 2019, they would stand and say, this is a commission bill, it's going to lower rates, and as we've all got together saying kumbaya, the trial lawyers and blah, 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 and this is going to lower rates. Well, by the time I got to my committee, I'm like, is this going to lower rates? And it's going to lower 15%. No, I can't do that. I never said this would lower rates. So this is the first time, I think, since tort reform started, that the insurance companies and their lobbyists, and really the self-insured who cause our major accidents, and they really mess it up for the timber guy that's safe, the 18-wheeler guys that's safe, because what the trucking lobby should do is say, we need to delineate the safe companies from the companies that let people drive while they're on meth. And we need to have a different standard for them. Let's put the safe drivers.
I gotta stop you. That don't work. As somebody who had a company with perfect CSA scores, no loss runs or whatever, it was always some stinking excuse. The only solution to resolve the insurance problem was to move out of Louisiana. That was the only solution.
Well, I'll tell you, I agree with you, because, we have a lot of business clients and they come to us with ideas for apps, they have patents, business concepts, and it's young kids from Bossier. Some of them grew up with my kids. And they'll say, hey, Mr. Gatti, will you set up us a Louisiana LLC? I'm like, no, but if you go rent a space in Tyler, my buddy will set one up for you there and you will thank me. So it's not just trucking. Commercial insurance on a 2-employee company is outrageous. I mean, and I love my insurance agent if they're listening, but I mean, what I pay on the stable is ridiculous. It's a metal building, right?
Yep.
It is, and we let people use it for free.
But
man, this is crazy.
But
no claims on wood. We have enough insurance, so if anybody gets harmed, they're covered. We have churches meet there when they get flooded out, and like every year it has gone up. And guess what else goes up? My property taxes. So I agree. Okay, that right now our population needs to get educated. We should stop playing checkers. It's the billboard. It's this. We need to play chess. Miami and New Orleans. Miami has 4-year prescriptive period. We have 1. Hey, listen, legislator, that's why we have more claims. Tell me what you're doing to lower my rates.
Yeah,
and they will start talking to you.
But Ryan, stop for a minute. When I drive from my office, you know where my office is. I went to I told Renee earlier, I drove from my office to Superior Steakhouse on Line Avenue. I don't know how many miles that is. It isn't too terribly far, maybe 5, 6, 7, 10 miles. And the only billboards between my office and there are trial lawyer billboards. They're the only damn people who can afford to pay for billboards. Regular business can't afford to pay for it. I mean, does that not scream a problem?
Well, I'll tell you, when you had Jack McFarland on your show a few weeks ago, when I was in the Senate, Jack's district was in my Senate district. I got to know him. We did a lot of work on foster care. His parents were foster parents. He helped me in the House when I had a bill in the Senate, vice versa. He's a logger. He was on the police jury. Great man. Okay. Jack had a bill, I think in about 2018. And he heard everything about the billboards and everything. And he had a bill that said, and it passed, I thought it passed constitutional muster because billboard lawyers say they have a freedom of speech. So this is how simple his bill was. All businesses can only advertise on a billboard within a 6-mile radius of their office. Okay? That would have eliminated billboard advertising, which then would have changed the culture of jackpot justice on small cases that everybody hates. Because the small cases receiving full payout is what is manipulating our rates, not the big anomalies.
I got a question. Pause right there for a second. I got a question. So I want to know, and I don't expect you to know the exact number off the top of your head, but what percentage of insurance claims, whether it's with the trucking industry or whether it's just Joe Blow driving his regular vehicle, what percentage of those insurance claims actually go to court? Does anybody know?
Oh, I mean, you mean trial?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean,
or I have to go in front of a judge.
I actually was looking on the Supreme Court's website today because, and I've told y'all this before, I mean, I've had some of the biggest cases in Bossier, DeSoto, and Caddo. We're celebrating 25 years in 2025. I have never had a civil jury trial. Every case I have had that's traumatic, we sit at this table with a mediator, and the mediator says, Ryan's offer was fair, y'all need to pay it. Okay, that's typically what happens because we're an arbitration generation. Okay, and so for me to get an award from my client to recover for all their harms and losses in a mediation, that means I have to state a number. 5 levels of insurance have to agree it's fair, and the mediator, who is a insurance defense attorney, 9 times out of 10 has to say this is correct, this is fair and just.
Okay? So walk us average. Walk us average view. Walk us average
2% actually jury.
All right. But walk us average viewers here who don't know this process and haven't been through one of these claims, because I agree with Duke. I mean, the billboards are nuts, and we all do. But again, there were just as many in Georgia, and I was just there Thursday and Friday. But walk us through, one of these, what we'll just say, crazy, outrageous claims. So you're telling me that I run into Duke ran into me. That's right. He was driving the truck. He ran into me. I come to you, Ryan Gatti, say, I want to sue Duke for $10 million. Show me the money. You mean to tell me that the insurance company that Duke has, let's assume I wasn't an uninsured motorist. You're telling me that the insurance company that Duke has doesn't just instantly cut a check because you sent them a nasty letter?
I'm going to tell you a real case scenario. A guy visited my Sunday school class with his wife, and I was teaching. And 3 months later, he was bobtailing, no trailer, on his 18-wheeler. He just dropped off a crane, and he was coming north on Highway 157. There was another 18-wheeler, oversized, from Texas, carrying a 100,000-pound track hoe, going the other way, and they met on the Goat Hill Road Bridge on 157. This guy was too wide, so he hit the other 18-wheeler going 55 miles an hour with a 100,000-pound load because he was in a hurry to drop off the track hoe for a pipeline company. So he's overweight. Duke, you know what that means? He's on a posted bridge, overweight, speeding, bad. So they called me. He had a flailed chest, a grade 3 diffuse axonal injury in his head. He had a broken right elbow, femur exposed. He was hanging out of the truck. It broke the seatbelt off. He got hit so hard. The driver, ironically, the way when he slammed on the brakes, he turned. So the passenger who I represented, they thought he was dead at the scene. They airlifted him. They actually had to cut him from his nipple to his scapula, open him up, and he had what's called paradoxical shift in his flailed chest. So when he would breathe in, his chest would expand, but right there it would go down. And then when he breathed out, it would pop out. Duke, you probably seen that in car wrecks when you were in the fire department. Yep. So Dr. Weigel was an Army doctor. He had fixed people like this with roadside bombs. So they take a titanium deal built specifically for that rib, and they screw it into the sternum, into the rib, and then to the back of the rib. So he had 8 ribs crushed, okay? No issue with liability. I told them, we're going to be done in like 6 months, okay? 5 years later, the Friday before a Monday trial, I get a call and they say, we're not going to trial. And I said, you're not getting another continuance. The judge said so. They said, nah, we're just going to pay you your last offer. And I was like, why did you do that? Why did you put this family? Why did you make me take 50 depositions, right? All over the country. We just wanted to see if you would really take it to trial. The value of the case was the same the day they came in my office or when I visited with them at the hospital and the day we settled it. Now, theoretically, this is how it's supposed to happen. I write one letter and says, hey, here's the police report. These are the injuries. Would you pay them some money real quick to pay off his medical bills and then we'll settle up later? That's how we used to do it. But now the insurance company takes $5-10 million that they know the case is worth. They put it in a high yield account and it grows $2 or $3 million and then they end up saying, okay, well, here you go. Here's enough to pay his medicals. Like, that's how it really works. I have never had a traumatic case, ever. And I've had some terrible cases with no liability, not fender benders. I'm talking crushed legs, burned bodies, horrible things. I've never had the insurance company say, hey, whoa, wait. Look, we want to go ahead and write that $7 million check for LSU because we know we're at fault and we have $100 million in coverage. See, tort reform is to help eliminate the ability of really, really hurt people to recover all their harms and losses. I mean, these bean counters on the insurance side, they're not worried about a $15,000 claim, right? Because they get to raise Duke's rates, not pay you anything. That's their gravy. But when a member of our community gets crushed by a drunk driver and they have a $4 million ER bill at LSU, that's the one they start crimping up about, right? And so when I was in the legislature, first thing I realized after being there about 3 days, the insurance companies needed no help at the legislature. They had their bases covered, right? It was the small business people, leg one of the stool, and then the people who got hurt. They were the ones left out of every equation that I read. We could go through all 18 bills tonight, and I could show you how the small business people and the truly injured are left out of all the reforms. And I'll tell you, the winner is, until we change what we're doing, the insurance companies are going to win. Every one of these bills that we could talk about is a winner for them. So yeah, the lawyers are bad, the billboards are bad, but when Jack McFarland did that bill, to the 6 mile radius bill, I said, I'll carry it to the Senate. Lamar came to the table with lobby and they killed his bill. Now, the people who planted the propaganda that the billboard was raising rates was lobby. So when they sent all their people to the table to kill the bill, I'm like, what just happened? You've been begging for this billboard stuff to go away for years. Well, here's what they said, Ryan, we don't want it to go away because then we got to deal with the real problem. As long as we have billboard lawyers, we can blame them. But if we took down all the billboards, how are we going to raise rates? I'm like, you do know that I'm a trial lawyer. I'm like, oh, we didn't know. Oh, you're brand new. We didn't know. So that's what we're looking at.
All right. So, Duke, I'm going to play this video because, this is Gabe Furman, District 22 State Rep, and let's hear what he has to say. Let me see if I can get the buttons pressed here correctly.
One moment through this whole discussion that has really stood out for me is a couple months ago we had a town hall meeting in Pineville. Me and Representative DeWitt and Speaker Pro Tem Johnson. We had over 300 people show up, and it was one heartbreaking story after another. Single moms, widows, tow truck drivers, loggers, dirt and sand haulers. One particular logging contractor from LaSalle Parish came up there, said, I don't know what to do. We're parking trucks. I'm going to park 5 trucks this week. I'm going to lay off 10 families. The same week, I don't know if we've got somebody from the Advocate here or the Picayune, NOLA. The same week, they ran a story that 2 prominent billboard attorneys were bragging about who's spending the most money in New Orleans. $25 million apiece. So we've got billboard wars in New Orleans, and my people are losing their jobs. I don't know how we regulate that. Let's face it, we've got a cultural problem. We've got this jackpot justice mentality. I don't want to deprive anybody of their ability to make a living. I hope every attorney and every insurance executive in the state gets filthy rich. But at the end of the day, I answer to the people back home, and we've got to find solutions.
I'll just note that he waited to the end of that to mention the insurance industry too. And again, I'm not carrying water for any trial lawyers or anybody. I'm in the same spot of Landry's poll where I'm putting it at about a 50-50 deal.
Well, I think it's significant that if you go to the 25-minute mark in that video, because I've only watched it one time, but if my memory serves me correct, about the 24.5-minute mark, he's asked a question by the press. But before you go to that, it might be wrong. It might be 20. I might have my address backwards in my head. But and I've only seen this one time, and that's Representative Furman. And I think if I were going to post his video on my website, the first question I would do to introduce it is, what does he do for a living? Does anybody know what Representative Furman has done the last 30 years for his business? He's not a trucker. He's not a trucker.
He's an adjuster, right?
He's an insurance consultant.
Okay.
All right. So just throwing that out there. So about because I'm always looking for someone to say we're going to do court reform and premium reform. I didn't know who he was before I watched that. Okay. I knew he had one of the bills that I liked. So I wanted to see if he was going to do all 3 legs of the stool or just be a stool pigeon. Okay. And this is what he says. He's asked from an older man, it looks like to his right. And you hear his voice. He's an older man. He's obviously concerned. He said, now, if you get all these bills passed, when can we expect a rate reduction? And he was honest. He said, you probably won't get one for 2 or 3 years. And if we have inflation, you probably won't see one. And you could hear like a gasp in the audience because the lobbyists were like, you're not supposed to tell people that. Right?
Yeah, but
you're not supposed to tell people your next move. So now
but
also what he did, but also let me tell you what else he did. It's very, very, you have to know you're playing chess and not checkers. When he said, I'm out there in LaSalle Parish, and boy, golly, there's so many, 300 people in the room. And man, I tell you, it was like we were just mourning the loss of small business altogether. And I'm like, Sir, aren't you the one charging everybody the premiums, and your bill doesn't reduce premiums? I mean, it's like adding insult to injury. And most people now in Lake Charles and New Orleans have figured out these people are not about reducing rates. So what's
Yeah, but
significant about
I don't
is that
think he's an insurance salesman.
What is he?
I don't think he's an insurance salesman. I think he's an adjuster. When there's, a hail damage, he goes in, looks at the houses, and I think that's what he does.
I mean, is he closer to the people that pay premiums and do not financially benefit from paying of the premiums, or is he closer to the people whose entire income is based on the increase of premiums?
I don't 100% know, and I'm not going to class him to be anything specific. And I don't know. Maybe you know for a fact exactly what he is. So I would just say that we should both be careful in cautioning and saying what he specifically or what he does or doesn't make in it, because I don't think he is a.
Let's go by the House of Louisiana. Louisiana House's own page says background information, occupation insurance consultant.
So Duke, I want to let you know this is that think about the level of propaganda that has to happen for you and I to think an insurance consultant is going to want to lower rates.
Yeah, but it would be the same as you being in the Senate, Ryan, as an attorney. I mean, I would
insurance companies. I fight insurance. I fight insurance every day. I do not make money when premiums go up.
But when it comes to the law, you being in the background of the legal community, I would defer to, your experience as being a lawyer and in the legal community when it comes to questions of legislation pertaining to that. I mean, I remember this argument, somebody made the argument, they said, well, separation of powers. We shouldn't have, lawyers in the legislative branch because they already have the judicial. And I said, but no, your legislature is making the laws. You need attorneys in there. On the same token,
you need more doctors in the operating room. And wait, you got to have doctors do surgery. Yeah, but we don't like their bedside manner. Well, then you're going to have a bunch of botched surgeries. So by not wanting lawyers who fight for the people in the legislature, you have left the chicken coop open. And now you have one person, maybe two, out of 140, however many legislators there are, that advocate for people on that third leg of the stool. So you have a complete representation from the insurance company. You have
that third leg of the stool, and this is what I want to ask you, and this is another question, not exactly on insurance, but just more from your experience as a legislator. The truth of the matter is when you were there, and Rex has highlighted this in one of our previous posts. We had you at the PEC and had Seaball come to the PEC, and both of y'all gave presentations. And when I prompted at the start of, your segment, that Rex did the AI thing, and as I appreciate, and Rex, correct me if I articulate this wrong, but you ran basically the presentations of what Ryan put forward, what Seaball put forward, and what Governor Landry has articulated. And the AI actually made an assessment, whether you know this or not, Ryan, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rex, but as I appreciated it, more or less found you to be correct, Ryan.
Yeah. So let me clarify on that.
Compliments in one show. That's pretty big.
We need to end the show right there because Duke just said that.
Well, we're not.
but let me be clear to everybody. 1 second, Duke. So let me be clear to everybody, Duke. What you said is absolutely correct. And I did not, in my prompting, inject any bias into that. Now, I'm very specific in how I prompt it to make sure that I get good results. But I didn't inject any bias for it to look for either side. All right? But you are correct, Duke, that yes, it leans towards the Gatti side. Now, I'll also say this. That PEC meeting, when I listened to Gatti speak, and then listen to Seabaugh speak, Seabaugh's biggest push was Gatti's just wrong. That was his only thing. At least, I'll give Ryan credit, at least Ryan came to the table with some logic, whether it was right or wrong at that point. And that is the point, and I'll say it publicly because I've said it before, that is the point when my opinion of Ryan started to change. Because I was like, wait a minute, Seabaugh's only excuse, and Alan, you're welcome on the show anytime, you got our phone numbers. But that was at the point that I realized that Seabaugh's whole argument was for insurance reform is Gatti's wrong. Now that's the truth.
I mean, it has to be because, I mean, think about this. This is what happened in that debate that was weird. I'm a trial lawyer. He works for an insurance company. Trial lawyers do not rely on actuaries for anything. I do not need a bean counter to tell me how to run my office. To run an insurance company, you have to have actuaries. It is by law. Actuaries have to tell you every day, this is your profit, this is your loss, this is your risk, this is your x-axis, y-axis. They do math that, hey, I got to pause here. My daughter's graduating from Vanderbilt Friday, so I'm getting a raise. So I'm wearing this hat to honor her, okay? But she could be an actuary. She's smart. So in that debate, you had a trial lawyer saying, we need actuaries. And the defense lawyer for State Farm said, he's a liar. We don't need no actuaries. You can't trust actuaries. So let me tell you what I figured out in the last 6 years after watching that debate is that in law and in business and in the legislature and in your family, you fall in two silos. Most people, missionary or mercenary. Okay? The missionary's thinking about other people, visionary, like, and you don't really get to pick which hat you wear. It's how you're wired. Okay? So my wife, who's a psychologist, said, Ryan, you have that missionary mind. And Jeff Bezos says that Amazon started as a missionary, just wanted people to have books. He didn't plan on being a trillionaire. It just, missionaries in the long run always are happier. Then you have mercenaries. They trade God for gold, and they're only worried about their message and money. Okay? And guess what they typically get? No one wants to hear their message, and they never have enough money. So in that debate, in a microcosmic way, I was telling y'all stuff that hurt my business. Okay? I was telling you, like, if you pass to your prescription, I'm not going to get as many clients. Okay? You see what I'm getting at?
I can relate to that. We do it every Tuesday.
Yeah, so y'all are mission-minded, right? Y'all are mission-minded. You see what I'm getting at? I mean, y'all have a mission, and you like, the dog that caught the bumper. What do you do now? And so that's what you really see in a lot of these debates is I kind of, after about 3 minutes into hearing the legislator talk, I'm like, that's a mercenary. Like Seabaugh, Ryan Gatti is a liberal because he voted for the 0.01 sales tax. What did they do the first thing they got last year? Voted for like a $10 billion sales tax. And it was the Republican thing to do. I'm like, well, thank you. AI needs to look at that too, But what was unique in that PEC debate was that Seabaugh brought no PowerPoint, no stats, and he's got free actuaries. He could have said, look, here's Jim Bob. He's a PhD from Northwestern, the real Northwestern, and he ran the numbers on what Ryan said, and Ryan's 2-year prescriptive bill is going to raise rates. But he didn't do that. I did. I brought actuary reports. That's how bad our system is right now. Insurance people are saying you can't rely on an actuary. And trial lawyers are saying, we got to fix the system. Like Duke said, let's take down every billboard. Let's give them court reform. Let's cap damages at $1. I mean, Seabaugh's going to do a radio ad in 2054 on Keel. And he's going to say, I know our rates are the highest they've ever been, and you've given us caps, you've given us this. Now, if you'll just pass my legislation that says when an 18-wheeler crushes somebody on I-20, that the person hurt has to pay for their front bumper, and then we'll lower your rates. And he'll say, I've been in the House, the Senate, the House, and the Senate, and I'm for term limits, and I've only served 40 years. But if you would just continue to trust me, we're going to be okay.
Whoa. Hold up. You're crossing the
And
Rubicon going to term limits there now. Okay.
I mean,
Come on.
So I'm going to tell you this.
Okay.
I have a daughter that lives in
I got it.
Nashville and a daughter that lives in Texas. And I'll tell you, it is sad that over the last 9 years with me, with my head up the cow's rear end, I don't see anything changing. Like this legislature, when it comes to insurance reform, I have knowledge, having read actuary reports from my 4-year sentence in the Senate, that most of the bills they are drafting are going to raise rates and increase costs, which they're okay with, because if it increases the cost of litigation, guess what happens? Premiums go up.
So okay, I want to digress just here a little bit. That's a good segue. So you were in the Senate. You ran against Henry Burns. You won. You went to the Senate. And before that, you spent time in the legislature. So I know you know the answer to this question. I know, and I already know the answer. So I'm going to pose this way, because the majority of people watching this and the majority of people that will watch this, they don't know this. I know you know it, but they don't know this. And I'll frame it this way. I had somebody that, and I've had this conversation, I know you've had it too, that they had occasion to be kind of down there behind the scenes in the legislature in Baton Rouge. And, they were able to kind of see actually how the sausage is made. They actually were able to see it. And they said to me, dude, I had no idea. And said, in fact, I'm totally disgusted. Totally disgusted. They said, it doesn't matter what anybody out here on Main Street thinks, what you want. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is when everybody is down there is to do this, you have to give me this. And to give me this, you got to, it's horse trading. So when I say to you, having been in there, that's the God's honest truth, isn't it?
Well, I think practically that's the people with that mentality are who the lobbyists want. People who compromise all the time. So
no,
when you have a
that's the way deals are made. That's the way legislation is passes or fails down there, is making deals, right?
It's even tighter than that. Like, it's not just, hey, I'll give you this if you give me that. It is, I'm not going to put money into your account. Okay? Because you have to raise about $600,000 to run for the Senate. Okay? That's a lot of $50 contributions from the Halton Buccaneer parents. Okay? You can't raise it local. So you have to go to the billionaires and the millionaires, and you have to do like Hunger Games. You got to shoot your bow and arrow to get the sponsors, right? And so it's really what it's like. So if you're willing to do that to get the $600,000 for the Senate or the $400,000 for the State House, then you're agreeing ahead of time that two things will happen. You'll play that quid pro quo game, and you know that if you do something that hurts the people back home, they will cover it up for you with money. Okay? And so that's really, once again, it's the three things. If we wanted to control the legislature, we'd have to raise about $100 million. We'd have to go through 3 cycles of elections, and we'd have to like Robert Mills was made an example out of, right? He was there to take me out. Then he's an engineer. He's smart. So he said, hey, look, these numbers don't add up. They say, okay, no problem. We're going to run someone against you. So, I mean, it is quick succession. Now, the people of Bossier didn't decide for Robert Mills to run, and they didn't decide for Adam Bass to run. Someone else did. Okay? Somebody in Baton Rouge said, these are the kind of people we want. Okay? No one called me and said, would you run for office? I was sitting in my law firm with 2 clients. They said, you ought to throw your hat in the ring. Robert Adley's term limited. And I funded my own campaign. That's why I tell people, Duke, you're exactly right. You don't just have to play the game with votes. You have to start a year and a half earlier selling your soul in small $2,500 increments. Okay? And there is literally no way for someone to, I was the last grassroots candidate that they allowed to be in the legislature.
But
I'm the last one.
The only thing I would argue with you is it depends on which league of supporters you're going to throw in with, because the trial lawyer lobby, they have their group that they'll support, the same as lobby has their group that they'll support. I mean, but the bottom line at the end of the day, the average citizen, the regular Joes out here on the street, honestly, what you think really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, what wins or fails in Baton Rouge is what the legislator or whoever can get in trade. And that was the point I wanted to ask you and wanted to see what you would say to that, because I've seen it. I know people who have seen it. You were there. And I'm not saying every legislator is like that. I'm not,
I mean, and you're exactly right. I'll tell you what I saw. I saw in the 90s when I worked there, nobody really cared about what the lobbyists said. They were all successful doctors, lawyers, bankers. Like a steak at Ruth's Chris wasn't going to change their caloric intake for the day or impress them. Okay. They could buy the whole restaurant a steak. Okay. By the time I got there, a lot of the older people had been term limited out. Okay. And the people who were being recruited to run, like I read every bill and I prayed about, thought about, said that might help my hometown, that may not. Okay. Green button, red button. And they give you these pieces of paper from lobbyists. The pages run them to you to tell you, hey, lobby wants you to vote this way, or they're going to do a nasty gram, or the ASL, whatever, the liberal group wants you to vote this way. And I kept them all. I got like 9,000 of them. Okay. And it's funny because, I kept them. And I know that's probably scaring the heck out of a lot of lobbyists because they handwrite them, go give this to Gatti. If you don't vote this way, we're going to come after you.
Oh, I would love to see those. By all means,
and they would take you out to dinner, and when they figured out you were a pushover, they say, like, have you thought about being mayor of Houghton when you term limit? Have you thought about this? And when they sat me down, they'd say, my boss I'm obligated to take you out to dinner. We know you're not going to vote the way we want you to.
Why would I want to be mayor of Houghton and be beholden to Chris Smith? Are you kidding me? Anyway, go ahead.
I mean, but I'm telling you that because what term limits did is a lobbyist can now, they know you got a 12-year shelf life, so you're never going to get experiential wisdom. And then they're going to punch you to another. Once you figure out they're lying to you in year 8 or 10, I figured out in day 8. But when you figure out in year 8 that they're lying to you and they gutted you, you just kind of lame duck out. Now there's no career there anymore. And so what you're seeing in the quid pro quo you're talking about, it is worse now because there's more people worried about the lobbyist promise to make them a congressman or a lieutenant governor. That's the equity they trade in. A hope, like this insurance thing. If you give me everything I want, I might lower your rates in 2 years. Hey, Duke, if you vote on all 18 of these, I know you're going to be upset when you go back home and premiums increase, but here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a fundraiser down here in New Orleans with the insurance lobby, and you're going to have 100 people bring you a $2,500 check. And then you have to make a freaking decision. Are you going to be Daniel and say, I'm not bound down to the idol and get thrown in the fire? Or are you going to say, I'll take your 30 pieces of gold. That's Jesus right there. I mean, it's biblical proportions, and they don't understand it. They don't understand that people are going broke paying insurance. They don't understand it, okay? And they don't care, right? And so what's unique about the poll, the 32% thing, is that I predicted that 6 years ago. I said, hey, this is going to get so bad if we don't fix it now that we're going to start seeing businesses not choose our area. And I don't know if y'all watch those numbers like I do, but you can only, There's only so many ribbon cuttings at a Mexican restaurant in a year you can do before you start to scratch your head and say, is our economy really growing? Is our economy really growing? You know?
Yeah.
So the insurance issue has to be fixed. But once again, think about the history. The jury used to control safety. The lobbyists controlled the jury. That they wanted higher premiums, lower payouts. They couldn't get it through the judicial system. So they got it through the legislative system. It's a lot cheaper to go by to support 70 House members and 28 senators than to go figure out how to change the minds of 2 million potential jurors. So that's what we're seeing, and they're highly successful. I wish I was on their team so I could high five them, but I had a daughter die because of CAPS. No one can ever change my mind. I sat there for 10 years as she had seizures and her hips popped out of socket. And then we buried her, you know, because the hospital doctor said, Ryan, we can hurt babies all day and pay $500,000. And I want to tell you how CAPS work. There's so many good doctors in our town, and they have to compete with marginal practitioners. Because before we had CAPS, the good doctors were the cream of the crop and the bad doctors went out of business because they had too many claims. Now we have excellent doctors, 98% of them. And then there's 2% of the doctors that are able to keep their freaking license because of the cap. Okay. And so here's what happened. The local hospital hired a doctor that wasn't certified. He examined my wife for 9 months. We didn't know it. He ruptured Susan's placenta, didn't tell us. Rebecca was born lifeless. He brought her back after she'd been dead for 30 minutes, and her brain never recovered. Never. But she lived. Okay? So we paid the local hospital, my Blue Cross Blue Shield, paid the local hospital for the NICU visit about $2.1 million. They got paid for their mistake. Then they turned around and said, hey, Mr. Gatti, we'll give you $475 or you got to try the case. And we'll kick in another $400 for future medicals. Now, guess what? Did the doctor who hurt Rebecca, did his rates go down because of the cap? No. He's getting screwed on rates. Did we get made whole? No. Our harms and losses were carried by our family. You see that? Who made out like a bandit? The insurance company for the doctor, because now he's got something on his record. And so they tripled his rates. You see what I mean? And then they didn't have to pay anything. They made more money in the Blue Cross Blue Shield payment. You see what I'm getting at? That's what CAPS do. CAPS do not affect the small fender benders. CAPS only affect the severe traumatic injuries. So it's a payout boundary. And now let me tell you this. This is what we see now in Louisiana, and I predicted this. We have people moving to Louisiana to practice medicine who have multiple claims in other states. They come to Louisiana, they can afford the $100,000 policy. You see what I'm getting at? They can't afford the $10 million policy in North Carolina, so they come here. So do you think claims have gone up in Louisiana or gone down in Louisiana? They've gone up. We have more claims down in Louisiana than ever before. It is an epidemic. So how do they fix it? Do they say, you know what, let's expose the names of all the doctors that commit malpractice because we got the cap, let's just expose the bad ones? No, they say we're going to hide that from everybody. We're going to hide it. But that's my personal experience. So when someone says caps really help lower rates, no, they don't. Caps really help frivolous claims. No, they don't.
So
that doctor hurt my daughter. He knew that he did it. He lied to us about it. You know, we forgave him. Catherine wrote a book about it. Elizabeth's graduating from Vanderbilt in biomedical engineering. We decided to get better and not bitter. But for the life of me, I cannot believe people think cap and damages is going to lower rates, and that putting all the future medical bills in reversionary trust, that's going to lower rates. It's a lie, because I told legislators who I've talked to, if you'll show me an actuary report where your bill will lower rates, I'll support you. Well, Ryan, we're not asking actuaries about this bill because we're trying to get the billboards. And I'm saying, dude, I'm worried about the people like Rebecca, those families that don't have a way to pay for harms and losses they don't recover in court. You know, that's what these bills are about. These bills are not about your daughter's fender bender. They're not about fender benders at the Walmart parking lot. These bills will not affect what your family's going through. These bills will affect what my family went through. And I'll tell you, when you got to sit down with 100 people in your family at a funeral and tell them about the medical malpractice cap and that the doctor's rates didn't go down and Rebecca's harms and losses weren't fixed, but that third leg of the stool, the health insurance company for doctors, they have billions of dollars in their trust fund that they're accumulating.
Okay. So look, I would contend that you're a stakeholder in this insurance debate. You're a stakeholder from the aspect of, one, that you're in the business, that this applies to what you do for a living. Second,
what do you think affects my decisions more? The fact that I was a victim or the fact that I
let me
a little bit of money on car wrecks?
Let me finish. Second, you've experienced, a loss in the middle of all of this. I mean, totally understand it. So you also have insurance people. They're lobbying in Baton Rouge. They're trying to steer the debate. They're stakeholders from a monetary position, I would say. And at the end of the day, the people who are not any one of those people, all the rest of those people are out of the equation. We're all out of it. We don't even matter. We are.
You are in the middle of it because you are a rate payer.
No, we are in the middle of it. We're
being silenced from the debate. Like I can tell you,
we are being charged. The insurance companies are feeding off of us, and the lawyers are feeding off of us. We're getting it from both sides. We're getting it from both sides.
The only thing, I completely agree with that. But let me add a little bit to your chessboard, okay? Somebody called me this week about all these bills, and they were hot as a red iron brand. And they said, basically, their interpretation was, as a legislator, that these bills needed to happen to change the behavior of people who get in car wrecks and get paid $15,000 when they're not even hurt. And then we had to talk about their bill for an hour and a half, okay? And I fully understand what their bill is. I'm not going to say which one it was, okay? And then I asked them, I said, so you're mad about people getting a $15,000 check on a $2,000 crash? And I said, and they said, yes. And I said, who writes the $15,000 check? The insurance company, the person who was hurt, or the person who caused the wreck? And they paused for a minute. They're like, well, the insurance company does. Well, don't you think that's where we should start? Don't you think that might, like the other 49 states in the union, don't you think we ought to start with the person writing the check and pull back the Wizard of Oz curtain and say, look, dude, you're pulling the strings on both sides? Because the trial lawyers could all shut down today, okay? They're not any of those three legs on the stool that make a decision. The trial lawyers feed off of the insurance company's benefit of writing max checks for small cases. They just happen to be the beneficiary of a really bad system. So
I would agree. I would agree with that. I mean, but the problem is we're depending on people from both sides of the equation, to figure out how to solve this problem. And we've been depending on the lawyers and the insurance people legislatively to figure out the solution to this problem, and they ain't freaking never going to do it. It's never going to do it. All of us are going to be the wedge.
It is worse than that.
We're going to
It's
be the
worse than what
wedge
you're saying.
between all of you jackwagons in the law community and all of you jackwagons in the insurance community. We're going to be the wedge from now to the end of time. So I don't know, but something's got to change. Something's
Well, I
got to
think
break. I don't.
let me just add, it's worse than what you're saying, because the only experience I have that's different than you, because you've been the victim of stuff. I've been sued before, like you've been sued. You know, my dad's got a company that's highly regulated in the insurance. The only experience I have different that I can give to this dialogue is that I have been in the state Senate, and I have the unique aspect of being a victim of a pretty bad tort. Okay. He didn't mean to do it, but it was bad. It can't get anything worse than losing a child over 10 years. I mean, she'd be graduating from airline this year. It's really a hard year to watch tort reform happening, knowing that she'd be probably walking across the aisle at airline this year. Very hard for me to watch people say, oh, we're going to do reversionary trust and we're going to do no pay and your rates will go down. I'm like, look, I just hear 1976 all over again. If you pass the Med-Mal cap, frivolous claims will stop. I mean, this is the same song, different verse, different chorus singing it. And we all go to the Pied Piper. Man, this is going to make sense. So the only thing I can add to what you're saying, because you're 100% right, both sides are manipulating the system, is that don't assume they don't have the answers and the antidote to high rates. Don't assume they don't have it, because that's what I did. I went down there trying to split an atom for the first time, realized that they've been split. They had this atom split and hidden for 20 years. They know the secret sauce. It's really, yeah, the trial lawyers are bad and the insurance company bad, and they're getting kids to fight each other, right? Like Game of Thrones. You find out Uncle's lying to us. You know? I mean, the only difference, if you study this for 20 years like I have, is the only element you need to add to your equation is that the referee who stands in between the three legs of the stool has never done his job in Louisiana. Never. They don't regulate the trial lawyers. The Commissioner of Insurance doesn't regulate insurance. I mean, the thing that God populated in my head when I was trying to figure out a metaphor to explain it is, you remember when the Saints were going to make the playoffs and that guy just came across and just speared the Saints guy in the helmet, and they didn't call the flag, and that ruined the Saints' chances of going to the playoffs. So it was the umpire didn't make the call, and it was obvious. Okay, it wasn't the Saints coach that did something wrong, or I think it was Tampa Bay or Buffalo Bills. It wasn't their coach that did something wrong. It was the umpire. And if I would have walked up to you the next day and said, you know what, that Saints coach, he dropped the ball on that, you'd be like, Gatti, it was the umpire. It was no, it wasn't. It was that coach shouldn't have called that play. And you're like, look, Gatti, you're stupid. The umpire was standing there. Every angle of the camera showed the guy got speared in the helmet. It was a 15-yard penalty, but it stopped him 1 yard short. And you're like, no, Duke, you're wrong. And if I screamed at you enough about the coach, you'd say, fine, it was the coach. This is stupid. Right? That's what's happening in the legislature right now. We have elected a commissioner of insurance, okay? Very intelligent man, okay? I really thought he was going to come in like his father did with workers' compensation and LWCC and clean house Doge style, okay? That has not happened. And I don't think, short of, you can pass every billboard law you want, and you can pass every tort reform law you want, and you can pass every regulation you want, but if the umpire's not going to call helmet to the head in the fourth quarter, when everybody's like leaving their seats to get out of the state, you see what I'm getting at?
So where are you at on Landry? Where do you think Landry is on everything?
I am surprised. My mind is blown, because I'm like, he's actually saying what the actuaries have been saying for 20 years. I am so impressed with Landry right now. And you know, I wasn't always impressed with him.
Oh, I know. That's why I'm asking you the question, because I want to hear.
I thought Tim Temple, with what his dad did with LWCC and Mike Foster, I thought Tim Temple was going to say the things Landry was saying. And I thought Landry, because of his background, would have said trial lawyers are bad. Take down the billboards, right? But we've actually seen a kind of a change of position. And I'll usually, I admit when I'm wrong. I mean, I really thought Tim Temple and Barrow Peacock were going to revolutionize insurance in Louisiana like Elon Musk is doing with Trump right now with the budget. I really thought that. And so when nothing kind of happened and the same old bills started coming out of the commissioner's office, I was like, that's not a good sign. And then I thought, well, Landry would just fall in place with Tim, and you would have basically what the lobbyists have wanted for decades, which is full tort reform. So I think Landry, as the executive, and I haven't talked to him, so please know this is just my opinion. I'm really surprised at the stance he's taken, because it's kind of like the one I took. Like, hey, even though there's the trial lawyers and there's insurance, we really need to fix insurance, like the three legs of the stool. And I mean, obviously, he's the governor.
You're favorable where Landry's going with things.
Well, don't put words in my mouth. I'm saying that right now.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm feeling here.
I have been very amazed that rhetoric is not coming from Tim Temple, who has because remember, workers' comp was in a mess.
Well, the reason I find that interesting is because Moon Griffon has flipped. Moon Griffon is now not so favorable about Landry. And
well, you can probably understand. I haven't listened to Moon Griffon since he yelled and screamed at me for 45 minutes.
I believe that, and I thought he was actually rude.
Listen, I'm going to say this. I teach seminars on body language, picking a jury, how to ask questions. I was completely unimpressed with him. I've listened to him for decades. I called his show on 9/11 after his first show. I mean, I was a Kool-Aid drinking Moon Griffon guy, and sitting knee to knee with him and just looking at him in his eyes. I mean, he yelled and screamed at me about something that was obviously not a big deal. But he is he's obviously, he's got people who he answers to because he changes his thought patterns so quickly. So I think he's more of a mercenary than a missionary. I don't think
I was just drawing the distinction of how the tables have turned, because he was a big Landry guy. I would say that you weren't really a big Landry guy. And then now he's not a big Landry guy. And I'm not saying you are a big Landry guy, but you find Landry's positions favorable. And it's interesting. I'm not biased. I do have my opinion, but trying to look at it from the outside, I do find it interesting that the positions have changed. And, I interestingly, I got to tell you.
Can I tell you what I think happened? This is what I think happened. I think Landry, as Attorney General, had access to about this much of the information. Okay. When he became governor, he had access to all of this. Okay. And so I think what he did is he sat down and said, how do we really fix this? And nobody said reversionary trust, blah, blah, blah. He's like, no, how do we lower rates? And when you ask that question to the smart people, you get the same answer. And every state, you ask the actuaries the question, and they're honest with you. We have terrible roads, distracted drivers, a very high uninsured motorist, and until you start changing that culture, rates will continue to rise. And then there's also little things like if you jump to 4-year prescriptive period, right? You would lower claims. So that's what's unique is like, and now here's the thing. we all know Tim's getting the same information, right?
Right.
I mean, it's like, hey, Ryan, how do you get saved? Grace and faith, man, not your works. Now, if somebody said you got to work your way to heaven, be skeptical. That's not true. Okay. So insurance is math with a little bit of sociology in it. I mean, Facebook knows what I look at, and their actuaries figure out what I'm going to buy next. They nudge me. Insurance companies have actuaries too. And you know they have them because when you go in to get your policy, you have to fill out a form and certain information, and they run your driving record. Well, they don't just say, oh, you had 2 wrecks, we're going to charge you $50. An algorithm written by an actuary sets your rate down to the penny. Okay? So the insurance company that trusts the actuary to set your rate does not trust them globally and sociologically to maneuver legislation to lower rates. See that? So Tim and Landry are getting the same information. I'm intrigued by the message Landry's articulating is what other states have done to lower rates. You got to kill. This is a brilliant quote. You know, Landry said this in his legislative speech. The only thing worse than one boy crying wolf is what? 2 boys crying wolf. And so when he said that, I'm like, no one's had the guts to say that from that podium in the last 40 years. So he may be
including John Bell.
Well, yeah, John Bell didn't have a House and a Senate backing him. You see what I'm getting at? So,
he still could have said it. They wouldn't prevent him from saying it.
So, I honestly, for the first time, thought, man, it would be really cool to serve in the Senate under a guy like Landry. I think
Paul Johnson. Hang on, Ryan. Paul Johnson, we are not going down the road of Mike Johnson. We're not doing it. I'm sorry. You can just shut that crap down. We're not doing that tonight.
Paul and Mike are related, right?
Oh, really?
You would have. Well, look, we are going to cap the show before too long because if you got the 3 of us on MJ, this would be till midnight or better.
Oh, good grief. We never end this show.
Speaking of ending the show, look, I want to say first of all, this has been, between our 2 guests tonight, a very, very interesting discussion. And there have been several comments. Ryan, you should go back and read some of the comments, especially the later comments when you were kind of giving some of the inside baseball. Been a very interesting conversation all the way around. Have we fixed the insurance problem in this state? Heck no. But none of us that have been on here this evening have the real power to do that anyway. So all we can do is, I guess, wish and hope.
Can I say something about comments? I tell my kids this. You shouldn't take criticism from somebody you wouldn't take advice from. So I have had a lot of negative comments about me since 2015, and from people I probably wouldn't take advice from. You know, so now if somebody who I'd take advice from pulls me aside and says, "Hey, you're in the right ditch or the left ditch," I listen. You know, but I don't think anyone, especially the middle schoolers or high schoolers listening, that if you don't let the comments bother you unless it's somebody you take advice from.
Oh,
you know, because
hey, we get it every Tuesday night. We get plenty of comments one way or the other.
Y'all never. But no, I appreciate y'all letting me come on. I didn't have the benefit of listening to the guest earlier because as much as we talk about bad stuff happening, I want to end on a good thing. Like my niece has, you know, she has 5 kids. She just had another one. She got married to this man, and they weren't having the best time, you know. And he came, and we talked, and I should have just put him in a headlock and put him out of his misery, you know. But had the opportunity to share the gospel with him in a meaningful way, and I should have judged him, but I nudged him. And Friday, he gave his life to Christ as a grown man, and it was, man, you know, we all have the opportunity to share the love of Christ with people, no matter what our political views are. And I hope that what we'll see in Bossier in the next few years is that y'all take the opportunity to share the love of Christ with people. I know I've let myself kind of get lax in that, but man, he got baptized tonight in my barn. You know, he came in as a dirty sinner and left as a white as snow, and there wasn't a dry eye in the room. You know, because there was men there that are in the rehab center. There's men there that are doctors at Man Church, and Mark Rody's done an excellent job with that ministry. And I hate talking about bad stuff only because, you know, we're not senators or Christian, or we're not just businessmen that happen to go to church. We're Christians that happen to practice law, or we're Christians that happen to be in the medical field, or Christians that happen to be in the mortgage company or the tech business. And so many times when these political things happen, we feel like we have to dehumanize the other side. But you know, I care about Jeff Landry. I care about Mike Johnson. I care about Tim Temple. I care about Alan Seaball. You know, and I hope nobody thinks that like I've dehumanized them in a way that I don't respect them as humans. Just you know, we got to be really careful in politics that, you know, we don't dehumanize people, because I had that happen to me. I mean, I had like people say, well, you voted this way, so I get to treat you terrible. And so I'm just going to throw that out there. I mean, I know we're all allowed our different opinions and even our different facts in this fourth quarter of the world. But I tell you what, if you just go to the local church and teach a Sunday school class with all this knowledge you have, you'll be so much better off than talking politics. And I know both y'all invest in the community. I know both y'all do a lot more than this show. And I know a lot of this is theater, and I know that you're really good at it. But I appreciate y'all having your show and having me on. And you know, like I said, I just want to remind people, I am a trial lawyer, and I don't have a billboard. So if you don't like billboard lawyers, you know, 4723 Viking Drive, my pets live in Bossier.
He's a bus stop lawyer. He has bus stop benches.
That's right. You don't like Benton Road anymore. I get it.
No.
All right. Well, we appreciate you coming on and taking the time this evening. And it worked out perfect on the baptism this evening. You probably you could have just walked him outside and probably baptized him out in the front yard from all the rain. But we appreciate you coming on after that. It worked out great. And again, interesting discussion.
Yeah. So next time, let's talk about the school board, the city council, term limits. I'm joking. I don't want to talk about that.
We actually were going to talk about all those things a little bit tonight, but we went a little long on insurance.
I appreciate y'all finally letting me come on the show.
All right. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
We'll have you again.
Thank you all. Good night.
All right. Good night.
Well, that was fun.
Yes. Lots of interesting tidbit. Like I said, interesting tidbits in both those segments. I learned a little bit about the trucking side of things as far as insurance, and we learned a little bit about the inside baseball from Ryan's point of view. And look, you can't deny that a lot of what he said about the inside baseball, Sad Al's had a couple of comments, but you know, I'll say this, Jeff, you really aren't privy to everything that went on in the Mills race either. And I am. So there's a lot of that Ryan said that was actually true. You know, he's coming at it from his point of view, but a lot of it was actually true. And look, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I used to be anti-Ryan. I'm not so much anymore. As a matter of fact, I would probably lean on the pro-Ryan side, just understanding that Ryan's Ryan.
Well, I mean, no doubt Ryan is Ryan. You know, I think that some of the stuff that, you know, Ryan has said deserves consideration, and, you know, people need to form their own opinion. I mean, I think that I'll still stand by that. I believe that we have built a culture within, you know, our community, and we've built this, that it's okay to just file a lawsuit. Do I think that there's areas, you know, that need to be improved regarding insurance? Absolutely. There's no transparency. I will still, and I know this from firsthand experience, there's no transparency between rates and quotes from the insurance person and the broker of that insurance, there's no transparency. If the insurance person wants to bump you up $10,000, they can just arbitrarily do it. And you would never know the difference, because what was quoted by the broker, you'll never ever have any idea. You don't know. They don't have to disclose it. There are so many stones that need to be turned over. And the people we're asking to turn those stones over are stakeholders in both sides of the equation, lawyers and insurance people. And they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it.
Look, I can't argue with that at all. It's like putting both foxes in the hen house, and that's my whole contention, is that I'm really not sure what the fix is. I just know that the whole system overall is broken. But you know what's not broken, Mr. Duke Lowry?
By all means, tell me. The end button?
It is working just fine, and I want to hit the end button in just a minute or two with this graphic right in the middle of us. Term limits won by 83% and an 84% margin on both propositions this past weekend. It was only a 9% turnout, but honestly, that's about twice as much as I expected. To be truthful, I didn't expect it to be nowhere near 9%, really.
Well, look, at the end of the day, it comes down to math, right? And we already knew, because do you know who? So there's some people that may still be watching that pays attention to this stuff, but do you know who responds to polling and who you can get the best idea of things? You know which group of people that is? That's male voters. Do you know who the biggest majority of voters in this election were? Male voters.
Male voters, yeah.
So if you by chance know where the male voters stand, it stands to reason that if you can have an election where the male voters are the ones that are going to make the decision, you might want to try to kind of lean towards depending on those people to make the decision, which means you're not trying to turn out the vote. You're not trying to, but some people are legends in their own mind and want to turn out a ton of votes. And, but hey, you know what? We got 84%. I think that might be the highest voter turnout in Bossier. It surpasses Maggio's win when his first run. So I think we have the record by percentage here now with these propositions.
You might be right. There's a lot of firsts in this whole ordeal. The first to have a petition go all the way to the ballot box. The first petition in Bossier City to, enact term limits. The first, as far as percentage goes, you may be correct. We'll have to do a little digging, but you may be very correct on that. And we'll say again, this has been a group effort, and there have been a lot of people involved, including just the folks who were sharing, liking, commenting, emailing their city councilman, or calling, or even if you just went and sat in the meeting and didn't say anything. This is a full-blown turnout, including the 3,000 some odd people who twice signed the petition.
Yeah, and I want to segue onto that and just say to all the people that helped, thank you. There was a lot of people that contributed, like you were just saying, but more importantly, is the citizens of Bossier City. I mean, they recognized the significance of this. They took notice. They paid attention. I would contend that a large majority of people took the initiative to learn the difference between prospective and retroactive. And, overall, this whole thing proves that citizen activism in government, it proves that you can beat City Hall. You can make a difference, in which, that was when we started this thing out. That was what we wanted to prove and show, that it's real. You can make a difference. All it takes is just a few of you to step up to the plate, and you just have to do something. You just have to take that step. People took that step, and look what happened. Look what happened.
Literally changed Bossier City politics. That is something that we all should be proud of. And dropping a quick little hint, the police jury, we've been saying over and over, is next.
Yeah, we'll give them a visit.
We might need to take a little break and a little breather for a little bit, but the police jury is coming up.
Yeah,
C-ball or no C-ball, bass or no bass.
Sure seems like there's a lot of people wanting us to go visit the police jury for some reason. I don't know why that is.
I don't know. I can't imagine. All right, Mr. Lowry. 260 plus shows, 200, we're on show 257, whatever. Anyway, a lot of shows, a lot of hours that you and I have spent sitting here on our soapboxes, and it has been a fun time pretty much every single minute.
Another 3 hours and 1 minute of my life spent with you on this digital highway to the world.
All right. Well, what do you say we do it again next Tuesday?
You're on next Tuesday. See you there.
See ya. I'm hitting the finish button. Take us out of here, Mr. Lowry.
See ya.